doesn't necessarily have to mean automatic failure. There are things, looking at other countries, looking at best practice that has been implemented elsewhere, that we could also be bringing into play. So that's a look at what's coming up on the show over the next 3 hours. I think there's quite a bit that you can choose from in terms of the open line this morning. I don't know if you saw the cover of the Sunday Times yesterday. One of the lead stories was a story around officials in the Department of Transport who traveled to France, and what they were supposed to be doing was to be examining a smart card machine that was owned by a company that is bidding for work with the department. In the end, this company ended up being given the contract, but the transport department is now fighting that in court, because they're fighting the validity of this particular contract. But here's what happened, right? You had a 7-person transport department delegation that went to France to examine this machine. But the machine was not in France. So why did they go to France? Because the official purpose of the trip was to examine the machine. But the machine was not in France. The machine can only be found in Greece and in the Czech Republic. This particular delegation, which included the bid evaluation committee members, couldn't explain why they went to France to examine said machine. They then moved to Amsterdam to visit a second machine, and this machine, had the ability to personalize the cards, including embedding biometrics in them and your card owner personal details, etc., etc. So they moved from France, went to Amsterdam. But in Amsterdam, again, what we understand is that there was no machine, because this machine could only be viewed in Morocco or Burkina Faso. So why did they go to Amsterdam? And it really is stories like this that show the extent to which, as a country, we are completely undermined. We are completely disrespected. And it seems that we can go on and on about needing to increase efficiencies in the state, needing to increase the capacity of the state. But I tell you what, there are some officials who are sitting and listening to it on a day-to-day basis, listening to SAFM, listening to other radio stations, and guess what they're doing? They're laughing. They're laughing at us. They're saying, oh, yes, go on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we are still going to do whatever it is that we want to do. How else do you explain this? How else do you explain this? All the while, there are hundreds of thousands of South Africans that are waiting for not only their new licenses to be printed, but other drivers who are going around driving using temporary licenses. How long has this problem gone on for? This is a national problem that affects every motorist on the road. But even that is not enough to get officials to do what is the right thing. So what must we do? What must we do when the situation is like this? Do we need to bring back shame? Do people how is this not shameful? When these officials think about the fact that their family members might be reading about them in the papers, they might hear their names in news bulletins, it clearly doesn't mean anything, right? It's like, yeah, no, go ahead. It's fine. We've seen many others survive. We'll make it. Is that how it goes? It is absolutely disgraceful. It is completely disgraceful that these are the things that continue to happen in spite of the situation that we find ourselves in as a country. And these officials are about as unpatriotic as it comes in this country. Anyway, I'll be taking your calls 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
Cathy Mohlahlana is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
This is the story of South Africa's creative heartbeat, where voices rise, where hands create, where stories live. From city stages to village festivals, from gallery walls to global screens, our creativity shapes the world. They are the storytellers, the dreamers, the makers. Join us as we honor brilliance and celebrate South Africa's creative excellence. The National Arts and Culture Awards 2025 on SABC1 on the 23rd of August from 7:30 p.m.
This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, let's get straight into it. Let me start off not far from home. Lenasia. Mohammed, you're calling us from Lenasia. Good morning.
Hi, Cathy. This is a very nice topic. Thank you very much. You know, in connection with the license story you're talking about, you know, there was a suggestion last year that these licenses that we have now, the cards, like I've got my third one now. I've renewed for the third time, 5 years. Why don't they extend the lifespan to 10 years so that in the meantime they can sort out the problem of the machine?
Yeah,
See what I'm saying?
I hear you, Mohammed, but you know, one thinks about how difficult this issue of the machine is to solve in the first place.
Yeah, you see, the problem is not, Cathy, you know, the problem is, you know and I know that it's all about what's in it for me. There are people there are companies who want to supply us with the machines, but everybody's going there to see what they can get out of it. Cathy, that's the reality of South Africa today.
Mohammed,
So,
these people that we talk about, right? These individuals, because here's a good example of something that is happening within the department, right? It's not linked to, or at least as far as we know, it's not linked to a minister giving instructions, etc., etc. These are individuals within the department that have gone out to do this work.
yeah.
They have intentionally decided that this is a process that they were going to embark on that had very little to do with what they were actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but you see, Cathy, at the end of the day, what makes me very cross, and I can hear it in your voice, is that it's our taxpayers' money that is being spent on these jaunts. These are holidays overseas in the name and the excuse of fact-finding. We are going to go and find. They've gone for a holiday. They want to go and see the Eiffel Tower. They want to go and see Paris. It's a jaunt. It's a holiday.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Cathy.
All right, Mohammed. Yeah, look, I think
Thank
it is absolutely, absolutely shameful. It is completely shameful And by the way, these are civil servants that these people, they have homes that they go back to. The people in their homes are equally concerned about the state of affairs in the country. So what changes between the drive from home to the drive to work? That when you're at home, you can lament and shout about the state of affairs, but somehow when you get to work, your actions don't quite meet what the rest of the country, including what could be your own family members, what they feel about what is going on in the state of this country. Parks, you're in Cape Town. Good morning. Good morning, Parks. All right, looks like we've lost Parks on the line. David, you're in Maritzburg. Good morning.
Cathy, it's proper to dismiss the myth and the lies that are being peddled by certain people on the radio, who always come on the radio and talk as if the minorities, colored, white, and Indians are marginalized in South Africa. I don't know by who. There was a caller during the morning show who said the Human Rights Commission only prioritizes issues raised by black people. I thought the host was going to ask him to be specific as to which matters have been raised by Indians or colored about the racism that was meted out by black people, which has not attended. Because for me, he kept on generalizing. Another thing, Katie, they always claim that the BEE and employment equity only benefit black people, which is a lie. Here in Durban and KZN, Indians have benefited immensely on the BEE. I'll cite a few examples. Vivian Reddy is one of the biggest beneficiaries. Roy Moodley, who's affectionately known as Mr. Prasa, is one of the biggest beneficiaries. Toshan Pandey, the SAPF story. Singh, who was awarded the contract to manage buses for Ekurhuleni municipality. In terms of the employment equity, Chris Kuma was the former treasurer of the Ekurhuleni municipality who came up with the questionable revenue management system together with Sutcliffe, was the former city manager. We have Alan Peters, Adrian Peters, who was the former engineering head. We have Ukoki, who was the former head of human settlement.
Okay.
They were all appointed through the PE system. The list is endless, Kate. I can name a lot of Indians who benefited from both the black economic empowerment as well as the employment equity. So people, they mustn't come on the radio and lie about
David, I must say, I didn't hear the specific caller, but was it not related to what would be more of a wholesale benefit? Because in the same way that we can make an argument for the fact that black people have benefited from triple BEE, certainly when you look at what the wholesale effect of that has been, unfortunately, it's negligible because it has only benefited a certain few. And so, which is why even the Human Rights Commission in its own work will say that these policies have not achieved the desired results. To an extent, they failed in addressing what they had intended to in the first place.
Katie, people, they come on the radio most of the time and talk as if other racial groups are marginalized. They're not benefiting from these policies, which is not true. They're highly benefiting. You know that Indians, they are mostly based in Durban and KZN. They are the ones who are highly benefiting. If you can check the number of Indians who have benefited from the PE system together with the employment equity, it's a lot that have benefited. And I don't know why they don't come and defend it. Secondly, we mustn't forget that they are also beneficiaries of the tricameral parliament. We were not there, they were there. They benefited big time you know.
Okay,
So
all
they
right,
mustn't
David.
come on the radio and lie. Thank you.
Thanks for that point. Yeah, look, this is an issue that I do think we need to pay more attention to as a country. We're trying to build a diverse country. We're trying to undo what apartheid did. In fact, we're trying to be better than the apartheid state was. And we should never forget that as our intention. And so when you listen to the experiences of colored people in this country, read some books that have been penned, I do think that we have to be honest about the extent to which we have practiced diversity in its truest meaning. In its truest meaning, and what that has meant for communities that are minorities. Because Indians are a minority group, colored people are a minority group. And we said that we will build a South Africa that gives space for all of these voices to be heard. It's just something that I think is worth reflecting on as a nation. Are we truly doing that? Are we truly doing that? All right, we'll continue taking your calls on the open line. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the South African National Taxi Council has denied claims that it allegedly instructed South Africans not to use private vehicles to transport their families, labelling the reports as false and misleading. Police are still on the hunt for suspects who shot and killed two brothers outside St. Mary's Church in the south of Durban on Saturday. The brothers were attending their uncle's funeral. And Israel is under renewed pressure to allow more food aid into the Gaza Strip, where hunger is worsening. The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa and Egypt's Foreign Minister are visiting the Rafah border crossing to highlight the problem. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Call us on 086 000 2032. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
How's Cathy? As long as you don't spend your money to go overseas, you will behave the way those people they are behaving, because they don't spend their money. It is state money. Everything is for free for them. Let's say to go to France, it was a mistake. Why they went to Amsterdam? That's the question. They don't care. Skosana here.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Val from Cape Town. Honestly, this story of the people from the Department of Transport that traveled to France and then to Amsterdam to go see machines that were not there is just absolutely astounding. Who did they make the appointment with? Who did they confirm with in those countries that, we're going to meet in such and such a place? That's the etiquette of setting up meetings. You have a correspondence with somebody on the other side, and you agree that we're going to meet you at such and such a place and we'll show you the machine. Who is the said person that they spoke to? Are they saying that they were duped by the people that said, come and see the machines? Or there was no due diligence, no due care taken in setting up these meetings? These are simple questions that they should be able to answer. It's absolutely, absolutely maddening.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. The trip by officials of Department of Transport to inspect the machine that is not there is a summary of what the real problem is. Yes, we might be pointing fingers to the ANC and ANC-led government, but the problem is us, South Africans, wherever we work. We do not love this country. Thank you. Anonymous in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah, thanks for those WhatsApp voice notes that you've been sending through to 0614-104107. Stofile, you're in the Eastern Cape. Good morning. Good morning, Stofile.
Morning, Dr. Stofile. Morning, Cathy.
Yes, sir.
This is just one of the problems which are endemic in our country. It's not the only isolated one. But let me start dealing with it. When the licenses started to come into the fore...
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to ask you, please switch off your radio because we are getting a bit of feedback from it.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Hello?
There we go. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
When this thing of licenses being renewed every 5 years, it's I think was it during Harati's time when he was a minister, it was Mr. Zuma's three Indians who were in the forefront. And one of them was sentenced, and he will spend his old sentence in a hospital, private hospital. If you recall, this is a third world country. There is no way that every year you can start a department and having this license renewed and, every year. There could be a single system. Once, every 5 years, you're not tested how to drive. As it is implied to have to get it. It's only the issue of people who are very old, who maybe the eyesight is dwindling. There should be a way of sending them to, eye tests, that kind of a thing, without cancelling the license. Now, this thing of people going there, about the machinery thing, send students to go and study. If you want to do a permanent thing of dealing with this thing, so that you have got your own machines made here. It has got to be. This should apply in the cases of IDs, which have got to be there, as a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
I'm saying this thing is not the first one. Because, for example, the Magistrate Commission have written letters to the President, everywhere, ministers, nothing being done. One symptom was when the magistrates are paying a certain amount of money, which is contributed to a certain portfolio under the Magistrate Commission. And the people in the Magistrate Commission, the majority of them are whites, and some Indians, who are the second largest number of them, allow people to go overseas who are their own people or chosen favorites. Purported to go and attend, some kind of conferences or meetings. And they didn't come back to report to the people whom they represent, who have paid subscription for them to go overseas. That's one type of corruption.
And
Right?
Stofile, when did this happen?
Oh, some time ago. I've written letters to them and nothing is done. My view was that the president, there's a lot that is happening there in Magistrate Commission. Quite a lot.
In the what commission?
Magistrate Commission.
Okay.
What should have been done by the Minister of Justice, who I've written to them, should have activated the president to issue a proclamation to the SIU to come up with evidence against all these sort of things in a balanced way, then institute criminal action against those who recover. And the only way of doing it must be on condition that the pensions must not be paid for all these people who are doing these things. Because they're benefiting, indirectly.
Stofile, we're going to have to leave it there for this morning. Thanks for your contribution. Yeah, bringing in that consequence, right? When this has happened, what is the punishment? Because you could well find that, yes, the department, once it's aware of what has happened, as it is in this case, then they fight it. But what happens to those officials? They continue on the job like nothing happened. They have the opportunity to continue with this kind of behavior. That also, the consequence management aspect, is what perpetuates the cycle. Xolani, you in the Eastern Cape. I understand you on the road. Good morning.
Hi, Cathy.
Hi, Xolani.
I think, Cathy, Sanral, together with the local chiefs, or should I say contralets, let me use that as an institution, plus the Department of traffic department within the areas. I'm looking at the N2. I just passed it up, I think about an hour and a half ago, an accident. Yes, it was not that bad. However, it's just that the other car was turning. It's a double barrier line trying to enter into these new, nice to look at, beautiful houses, and not cheap too, but they are built closer to the roads, and yet they create new accesses in awkward places. I think when those houses are built, if they've been approved to be built, then there should be a place of entrance which is not in a cave environment, because when a horse and trailer comes in and it's misty, you will find that if someone wants to enter and it's a double barrier line, they will enter, and then all of a sudden a car comes in, and then an accident happens. It's something that's happening quite often, especially between Umtamvuna River, which is from the KZN towards the Kai River in the when you go towards the East London side. I use that road quite a lot. There's nice, beautiful houses built next to the roads. They're too close for my liking, if I were to say some of them. But if they can just work around, Sanral can work in such a way that when the houses are built, that the entrances into these houses, they try as much as they can not to be in the curvy environment, and also if they have to change a double barrier line, then there must be some signs or even humps in that space.
Yeah, look, Xolani, I'd be very interested to see if, in fact, Sanral had what the municipal approvals for those particular roads that you're speaking about are. Because the process in and of itself, if you've ever gone through a process of getting approvals at a municipality level, it is nightmarish.
Yeah, but you see, some of the areas, Cathy, you must just understand, they are not part of the municipality. They are part of the
national
location.
roads.
So and also the place where the houses are built, they are owned by the chiefs. So the municipality has no access or approval on who should build where, because if someone gets an approval from the chief or the king in the area.
Yeah, look, but even then, Xolani, there still needs to be some kind of approval, especially if it's along a main arterial road that falls under Sanral.
Only the constitution that has been gazetted, that can allow even Sanral, because they won't have any leg to stand on if they can even build a leg. Otherwise, all the best.
Okay, all right, Xolani. Yeah, that's quite interesting. I guess the reason I'm saying it's quite interesting is because the experience in different tribal areas, I guess, is very different. But legally, is it okay if the chief says you can build 5 meters away from the road? Can you actually just do that if it's a main road? You've brought something up that's interesting, Xolani. I think we should look into that, because I think, my experience is that it's not necessarily the case in some under some tribal authorities, but I think it's worthwhile for us to look into it. Parks, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to Cathy. I just want to address this issue of these officials who went all the way to France for something that could have been done locally. First of all, Cathy, we seem to normalize as South Africans the way in which we allow the government to gaslight us
even our president. It was evident in his statement recently in this national dialogue where he says he does not understand how South Africans still live in abject poverty. Now, moving on, Cathy, there's Inetis, which has had long-standing problems with licensing and registration. And then there's this issue of the license card machine, which needs to be overhauled. And there's also still an issue that is not clear there as to whether they are going to source this machine, because last time I remember they were going to source a broken one, but that was not clearly stated to us as the citizens of the Republic as to what is going to happen with the process. Now, these officials, when they went to France, who approved from government that trip? That is number one. Number two, were the processes which are followed regarding procurement? And also, if you are going to go to a foreign country to source something for the other country, why wasn't there a consultation process with Parliament and also the concerned department, so that it can be able to be an issue that is debated thoroughly, and also to look at other alternatives? I mean, you've got a country like Dubai, which has got one of the most advanced licensing systems. We could have taken some pointers or even some consultation with Dubai. Thank you, Cathy.
Okay, thanks, Pax. Thanks for that contribution. Yeah. On the line, I think just coming off what Pax's contribution is the Transport Department spokesperson, Colin Msibi. Mr. Msibi, good morning to you. Thank you for calling in this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and thanks for giving us an opportunity.
Absolutely a pleasure. I understand that you want to speak about this licensing issue.
Well, indeed, I think there is an outcry. We were also taken by surprise of the videos that are circulating currently. But obviously, as the department, we've got to take our legal responsibilities seriously. So it is quite difficult to, at this point, offer a specific comment or condemn without having the facts. So it is important that we investigate what exactly happened, and who paid for the party, if it was the party that was happening there. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not that we are watching on the sidelines and not doing anything. There is something being done by the department. You would know that the team that went there is part of our agency, which is the DLCA, which is responsible for the driver's license card. So it is the bid committee from that agency that went that went abroad to look at this machine. So we're now having to establish the facts in terms of what exactly happened, because obviously such things, you never know whether this happened after work or whether they paid for themselves. So we need to establish all those facts, and we should be able to appraise the public as to what exactly happened and the action that needs to be taken. But I thought let's come on board and be able to clarify those issues. It doesn't look good at all, and I think it is a matter that we need to put out there quite clearly. Hence, it is important that we investigate this matter and we're able to come back to you and say this is what happened and this is the action we're taking to address this matter. But on the other issue...
So, Mr. Msibi, sorry, before you go on, you talked about being surprised. The line wasn't quite clear. What exactly is it that has caught you by surprise?
I'm saying the videos, we didn't even know that there was a video until yesterday. So of some celebration or something. So hence we don't even have the facts as to who actually paid for this particular celebration. So we need to establish all those facts, but also to say that as a department, what kind of action that is going to be taken.
But do you know? There is, But do you know who paid for the trip?
That's the thing that we need to establish. We don't even know. Hence, I'm saying it is the agency responsible for the licenses that is was responsible even for the adjudication of this particular bid. So those are the aspects that we need to establish.
So that's so strange to me, Mr. Msibi, because of course this issue is now before the courts. It's in front of the Pretoria High Court, and this is where the department is objecting to the implementation of this contract, right? Because it's considered to be invalid, irregular, and unlawful. Then what are the grounds on which the department is making that argument if you still want to go and investigate and find out how this happened? What is the basis then of the department's court case?
Well, what we're trying to establish is in terms of who paid for the trip to France, or wherever it is where they went. The issue, or it's a separate matter. The issue of going to court is on the basis of the Auditor General's report. The Auditor General's report made some findings in terms of the irregularities in as far as the adjudication or evaluation of this particular tender. And secondly, there was an issue about the budget analysis. That it
was much more than what it was initially budgeted for.
It was much more than, yes.
Yes, but even if we look at the Auditor General report, Mr. Msibi, part of what that report found is that there were questions over whether the right printer had been evaluated, had been reviewed. There were, of course, also findings that there were 2 members of that delegation that had traveled to France and Amsterdam that had not even had the opportunity to view a machine, let alone the machines that we want to bring into the country. So I'm just saying that what you are saying you still need to be investigated at this point, to me, could very well be contained in that Auditor General report and in the basis on why, because you're arguing that they didn't do their work. Why didn't they do their work? Because they undertook these visits but didn't do what they were supposed to do in relation to the procurement for this particular machine.
Look, the reality case is that the bid committee are specific individuals that are selected to do that particular job. And what comes out of the bid committee has to go through due processes in terms of auditing. And the Auditor General, that's exactly what she did. And the reasons out of that, and in fact, there was, even before the Auditor General finished her work, there was already an uproar publicly in terms of what is happening with this specific tender. So at some point, in fact, the minister had to ask the Auditor General to investigate some of the allegations that were made publicly. So coming out of that audit process, because we can't interfere as a department into the bidding process. There is a committee in place, which is exactly the same committee that went abroad. So now we've got to differentiate. We say the investigation needs to happen around what happened in terms of the video, because now the issue is about this video where people were celebrating and so forth, and that's not even part of the Auditor General's report. So we've got to then establish what exactly happened there.
Yes, but if you can hear, I haven't focused on the video at all. I'm talking about the facts of this case, which are before the court, and facts which could well already be known to you as the department, or should be known. I mean, do you have any reason to believe that the money did not come out of the Transport Department's coffers, as this is an agency that provides certain services to you anyway?
Look, there could be a possibility. I'm not saying it's the case. There could be a possibility that the service provider may have offered to pay. So that's why you need to investigate. We can't just assume that the money came from the agency. So hence, I'm saying to you, you need to investigate. Otherwise, you're just attracting unnecessary litigation.
How long are you expecting that investigation to last?
Sorry?
How long are you expecting that investigation to last?
Well, I think it is a matter that is quite urgent, and we've got to account to the public. If indeed it is the public's money that was used, we've got to account to the public. So it is a matter that is quite urgent as far as we are concerned.
Yeah, look, I think on both sides of the coin, Mr. Msibi, there's a reason why the public is outraged. Even if they didn't, even if they paid for the trip out of their pockets, they were still conducting work in line with what is a particular mandate that has been given to them. And I think the overriding factor here is that even on those grounds, you as a department have said that they have not done what they were supposed to do, which is why you are appealing and you are against this contract and seeking to have it overturned in the country's courts of law.
Not us. That's why I'm saying to you, we are going to court on the basis of the Auditor General's report.
Yes, but you're going to court. Are you saying that the department is going to court because it's forced by the Auditor General report?
We are saying, Cathy, once there's an appointment of the service provider, but we found that there's been irregularities. In terms of the PFMA, Section 81, it is very clear that when you proceed, when there's been findings to say there were some irregularities, then it becomes a financial misconduct. But if you then proceed, then there has to be some charges that are pressed against someone. So we are saying there is these findings, and therefore the court must then assist us to say, do we proceed with these findings, or do we revisit the whole process and restart it again? And that is what the papers are saying. We say it has to be set aside.
So, Mr. Msibi, I'm trying to hear you clearly. Are you saying that in the absence of the Auditor General finding, given the same set of facts around this matter, you as the Department of Transport would not be going any further with this matter? In fact, this contract would be implemented despite the fact that it was way over the budget that had initially been set aside, and the fact that the due diligence that went into the process was incredibly questionable.
The only time in case we would be able to find out that there were irregularities, it is through the audit process. I think that's the point that I'm trying to make to you, that in any case, we wouldn't implement a contract without having to get it audited. So our audit process, and that in particular of the Auditor General, found that there is an issue, and that is why we are not able to proceed. So in other words, don't put it as if it's an option, the fact that the Auditor General would have had to look at this matter. It was still going to go to the Auditor General, and that is where we are.
Part of the reason why we ended up at this aspect of the conversation, Mr. Msibi, is that I said you as the department are reviewing this very contract in court, and you said it's not the department, it's the Auditor General. And I need a clarity on that matter. And I asked you then if this is a process that you as the transport department are owning. Effectively, the impression that you've created is that your hand is being forced in this matter.
No. What I'm saying is that we take the Auditor General. That is why we even release this report. It is part of the process that we follow on any tender, that it has to go through this audit process. And be the ones that saw that there's issues. And then hence we've decided that let's go to court. We could have easily just gone ahead with the report, but we took that decision. It wasn't the Auditor General that said go to court on this matter. It is us who took that decision.
Okay, Mr. Msibi, I hope that you'll have answers for us soon in as far as all
Certainly,
matters
we will
related to
update the
this
public.
issue is
We
concerned.
will update the public. But thanks so much for the opportunity. And it doesn't mean, therefore, that we really have the answers at this point in terms of the trip in particular. But on the other issues of the courts, were the ones that said, let's go to court. Thank you so much.
All right. That is Colin Msibi there, Transport Department spokesperson. Yeah. I don't even know what to do next. Let me take the WhatsApp voice notes.
Okay, what I'm saying is that South Africa is going to explode very soon. This black on black taxi violence, it's going to be something very, very big. And I'm saying again that Santaco knows very well about this taxi driver saying people shouldn't be given lift in our cars. That's very funny that now they are saying they distance themselves from the claim.
Morning, Cathy. This is Steve from Durban. Cathy, we need to ask these people from Santaco and these taxi people one question, only one question. Do they have the capacity to carry the 60 million people in this country? They don't have. They don't have. So why are they removing people in their own cars? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't hold any waters what they're doing. They just don't have the capacity to carry all these people. They don't have the capacity. Just ask them, do they have the capacity to carry all these people?
In our top stories, community protests over Shawela village murder case and Santaco denies reports on private vehicle use. Good morning. The murder of a woman, allegedly by a boyfriend at Shawela outside Giyani in Limpopo, has led to community protests. Police say the woman was stabbed to death yesterday morning. Spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says community members have blocked roads calling for the arrest of the suspect. Mashaba says police are monitoring the protest.
Residents took to the street and blocked roads, demanding swift action after a woman was brutally stabbed to death, allegedly by her boyfriend, during the early hours of Sunday, the 17th of August 2025. The suspect fled the scene shortly after the incident, sparking widespread anger in the community. Lieutenant General Thembi Hadebe has reiterated that while the police understand the sensitivity of the case and the pain it has caused, lawlessness will not be tolerated.
The South African National Taxi Council, Santaco, has denied claims that it allegedly instructed South Africans not to use private vehicles to transport their families, labelling the reports as false and misleading. This follows the circulation of posts, including pictures and videos, alleging that taxi drivers were stopping and harassing motorists on the roads. The council has strongly condemned these acts. Santaco KZN Provincial Manager Sfiso Shangase says if profits are being made by private vehicles using public spaces to transport commuters, then they must be regulated.
We totally dismiss and we distance ourselves from that reports or those reports that have been doing rounds within the social media, and we would want to ensure the commuters and the road users as well that they should feel free to utilize their own vehicles. Not unless you must also be able then to qualify. If a person is giving lift for the return of earning some money, then that particular person is now entering into our space of becoming a public transporter. And if that is the case, then that is when we say the person must be also in line with the legal structure.
Police are still on the hunt for suspects who shot and killed two brothers outside St. Mary's Church in the south of Durban on Saturday. The brothers were attending their uncle's funeral. It's alleged the incident happened after one of the brothers gave a speech at the gathering. KwaZulu-Natal Police spokesperson Robert Nechihunda says no motive for the double murder has been established as yet.
Police in Wentworth are investigating a case of double murder following an incident in which two brothers were allegedly shot and killed at the gate of a church on Wentworth on Saturday. It is reported that the deceased, who once lived in Wentworth but relocated to Gauteng province, were attending a funeral of a relative when they were shot. The motive of the killing is yet to be established, and suspects are known at this stage.
The organization Undoing Tax Abuse Outer has questioned a European trip by 7 Transport Department officials. The officials travelled to France and Amsterdam to inspect a smart card printing machine for driving license cards, despite reportedly examining an unrelated machine owned by the French company Idemia. The company was still awarded the 898 million rand tender to produce driver's license in August last year. Shortly afterwards, Outer exposed various irregularities surrounding the process, which led to an investigation by the Auditor General. The AG identified various irregularities surrounding the process, prompting the Transport Minister, Barbara Creasy, to approach the Pretoria High Court to halt the process. Outer CEO Wayne Duvenage says the officials could not explain why they did not visit the Czech Republic or Greece, the only 2 sites where the machine could be examined.
We got information from whistleblowers about the whole bid evaluation committees evaluating the administrative and the technical matters and knocking all the bidders out except for one, which was Idemia. And then prior to that, they had gone on this trip. It was almost like preemptive that they were looking at going to see what Idemia's product was about and weren't even showed the right product. It had all the hallmarks of a corrupt tender, a tender that didn't follow due process. And we think this was just a joyride and an entertainment trip to sway the bid evaluation committee.
And finally, Israel is under renewed pressure to allow more food aid into the Gaza Strip, where hunger is worsening. The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa and Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati are visiting the Rafah border crossing to highlight the problem. The Gaza side is closed and under Israeli military control. Long queues of trucks loaded with supplies wait to be cleared to enter through another Israeli crossing nearby. Recapping the top story, the murder of a woman allegedly by her boyfriend at Shawela outside Giyani in Limpopo has led to community protests. Police say the woman was stabbed to death yesterday morning. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's 8 after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the show. Coming up in this hour, we'll look at what next for the National Dialogue. We'll reflect on the two-day convention held over the weekend, closing its work on Saturday, and then also try and understand what is the roadmap effectively over the next, 12 months still of this process. What is it that South Africans can expect? That's coming up in this hour. Before we get to that, lots of different WhatsApp voice notes on various issues. I think the license matter, though, really dominating our open line, especially following that call from the Transport Department spokesperson, Colin Msibi. Let's take some of those voice notes.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy, SAFM listeners, and everybody. I'm also fine. It's clear from what the gentleman MCB is saying that Department of Transport is not in charge. It's very clear. He doesn't even know what is going on. I mean, if it's a spokesperson, obviously the DG should have known something. So, I mean, I don't understand they just now running around. It's clear. They were aware about this thing, now they just beat around the bush. That's me thinking. Busy from Pretoria. Have a lovely morning.
Good morning, Cathy. It's anonymous here in Durban. You cooked Mr. Msibi with a very, very small pot. He doesn't even know how to answer you. He doesn't even know what is happening in his own department. He doesn't know what is happening with his contract. He literally doesn't know anything. And yes, I do believe that had this not gone through the audit process, it was just going to be signed and that's it, and life goes on. Thank you.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning. While you were talking about this license thing, I felt like I want to cry in where I'm sitting now, and there's no one that's going to take responsibility for these type of acts. And you know what? ANC, although there's a GNU, they're still in control, and I will pray like the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu for the fall of the ANC. Long time standing member as an ANC member, maybe not active, but it's time for them to go. No, they must go. We don't need them. South Africa don't need them. I don't need them in my life. Mr. Ramaphosa, if you listen to this voice note, your ANC's time is up. You can't go on stealing and going on like this. John, Cape Town.
Good morning, Keith. I don't think it's fair for that guy from KZN to come on radio to say people come on radio and lie. How are people lying when they're expressing their own feelings about their own experiences? Maybe it doesn't seem genuine to him or it doesn't make sense, but he can't just discount it like that. And the fact that he knows a handful of Indians who have benefited from BEE doesn't make the expressions and feelings of others in the rest of the country wrong. I think we just need to be sensitive about how others are feeling, really, and not think ours is more important or superior than theirs.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
SAFM is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
Well, when officially launching the National Dialogue on Friday last week, President Cyril Ramaphosa said the conversation will allow people to be honest about various challenges that confront our society. Some of these include gender-based violence, service delivery, and the levels of inequality. Let's listen to what he had to say as part of his opening remarks.
This is not a partisan platform. This is a national platform. Here, no voice is too small. No perspective is too inconvenient to be heard. We are gathered to listen to each other, to understand one another, and to chart a common path forward for our country. We are meeting at a time of profound challenges that confront our country and our people. Economic hardships that our people are living under, unemployment that continues to rise, inequality that besets our people, growing poverty, and a crisis of confidence in our institutions. We also meet at a time when the world is rapidly changing, and our own ability to adapt and renew ourselves will define the next generation. But history teaches us that nations are not defined solely by their difficulties. Nations are defined by how they respond to the challenges that confront them. History teaches us that unity is a powerful force for change, for transformation. It is also about getting leaders to be able to realize what worries South Africans and how leaders themselves can be engaged in understanding the lives of South Africans and be accountable.
So those were his opening reflections, or at least just a snippet of what the president had to say. The individuals that were part of this convention over the 48 hours that it lasted, some of them join us on the line this morning. Nonkululeko Mtambo is a member of the convention organizing committee. Nonkululeko, good morning to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nomathamsanqa Masiko Mpaka is a South African researcher for the African Division at Human Rights Watch. Nomathamsanqa, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and a very good morning to your listeners as well.
Itumeleng Mohlahlana is Deputy General Secretary at Equal Education, also attended this particular session on behalf of other civil society groups. Itumeleng, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. I'm the General Secretary of Equal Education. Thank you.
So if we can maybe begin, Nonkululeko, with you. The first day, of course, kicked off with a lot of fanfare, a lot of media presence, not surprisingly so because of the kind of interest that has been generated in the national dialogue as a process, but also because it is something that could well be a vehicle that helps South Africans to negotiate the challenges that our country faces right now. Day two, a lot more muted than day one, but give us an overall sense of how the discussions, how the conversations unfolded over this 2-day period and where things are today after the convention.
Thank you. So just maybe to go over some key points in the program. The beginning, as you said, had a lot more media presence, and I think it was generally because of the opening of what would be a very difficult process, and I think the expectations of the country were quite heavy on the shoulders of the people in the room. In that day, we opened the process and we went into what was the dialogue labs in the thematic, in I believe 10 thematic groups, covering from everywhere to GBV, land, business, so on and so forth. And in that day, we essentially wanted to establish with one another a certain degree of rapport that we are here to speak, we are here to be heard, but we're also here, most importantly, to set an agenda for what the next 6 months are going to look like in the national dialogue process and responding to what the rapid response issues are within the different sectors and communities. The second day then brings us to a report back from those sessions and a going through the roadmap The intention was that we would have a steering committee elected by the end of the day, but there was, there was from the response from the people in the room, from everything from designating sectors to how the steering committee would be chosen, what guided us in looking at a different modality for that. So we are expecting a steering committee to be established within the 2 weeks that everyone was given time for, to establish the different sectors which were missing from the original report, but also to go back to their individual sectors, speak properly and thoroughly about what they want to see, and loop back into the process with, of course, the COC then handing over for the rest of the 6 months.
Itumeleng, the overall then assessment of the process itself and what it is that you feel you were able to get done.
Look, as Equal Education, amongst other civil society, we did go to the first convention with an eyebrow raised because of some of the issues that we had witnessed in the process leading up to the convention. We were particularly interested to see the inclusivity of the convention and how it would look like. And I think I echo what Nonkululeko was saying, that it did provide a space where people could engage, particularly we were leading a dialogue lab on winning the futures through education and health. And in that lab, we were able to get a pilot of what dialogues could possibly look like, engaging different stakeholders on the issues. And we're able to get some of the things that like rapid responses on things that can be done, particularly in education and health. But moreover, there was a big consensus around changing the culture of how we engage as active citizens in this dialogue, but in general with civic activities in our country. So we are looking forward to see the rolling out and actually participating in the different formations that will come through this dialogue.
In then looking at just the involvement within the process for you as civil society groups, how open was the platform? Because of course, as you say, the level of skepticism going into it was informed by what we saw partly as the communication around it, the withdrawal of some organizations, but also just the sense that the people that were in the room represent organizations that would by and large be on some of government's programs, not necessarily as implementing partners, but that they would have direct communication. They would have been invited to other events. So they're part of an already existing database. And the national dialogue is to open the space up to beyond those who traditionally have access to it.
Saying it quite well. I think that was the biggest issue that we had as movements, the inclusion of people, so that this process does not become an elitist process and process of people who are in already existing dialogues. I do think, though, that when the foundations pulled out, civil society did get an opportunity to lead some of the conversations and be able to shape what then becomes of the people that were added into being part of the first convention, even though the logistics were quite hard. But in the convention, we were able to see quite a number of organizations and also individuals being represented. But as you had heard, some of the conversation really were about how do we then make sure that in the rolling out, there is more inclusivity, particularly of people with disabilities, of children, and other people who aren't normally represented in these kind of conversations. And that's our aim as civil society, to make sure that we use this process of the dialogue to promote active citizenship and not just within the people that are usually engaged, but in the broader society as well.
Noma, speak to us about your own experience being part of the convention.
Thanks, Cathy. So, I mean, I think this question has been really leaving me a little bit restless as I got the invitation to be part of this conversation because, you know, I went into the dialogue as a South African first, of course, but then, of course, wearing the hat of the organization that I represent. And I think there were moments within, you know, my attendance at the convention where I felt like there was a bit of a tug of war between myself as a, you know, a South African citizen first, and then, you know, the hat that I wear as a human rights researcher and activist. But I think just my own reflections, I think one of the things, and of course I completely take on, you know, the skepticism, the widespread skepticism that we've been seeing in the country around the process, you know, people calling it an expensive talk shop, people calling it very dishonest, and it masking the failures of the government, being top down, being a distraction, and all the rest of it. But one of the things that I think, as I was sitting with myself just last night and this morning, and I thought, you know, as a country, we should never stop talking. And that, but of course, noting that, you know, the talking should not stop there. We need action and we need implementation. And of course, as well, recognizing that democracy, after all, is a perpetual dialogue. And so for me, as somebody who works in the human rights space, not just in South Africa, I cover, you know, Eswatini and Lesotho and other countries within Southern Africa. And when you see countries such as Eswatini, where moments like these are almost impossible, where citizens themselves have been calling for a dialogue where they could deliberate on the democratic future of the country, and they've been denied, you know, that platform. And so it kind of, for me, gives me a bit of perspective that as a country, with all its challenges, that we actually have moments where we can pause, where we can reflect, we can reimagine, we can recalibrate around where we are in a country and where we're going forward. Noting that there are many other, you know, channels, forums, platforms, democratic processes where there is interaction and participation between the government and its citizens. But for me, I think from a more optimistic point of view, because I suppose I'm an incurable optimist, I think the moment for us to be able to dialogue with governments and other people in different sectors, I think it is something positive and is an opportunity that we should not take lightly.
Noma, I'm quite interested in this, you know, the expression that you've used around a tug of war between, you know, your role as a citizen and the role that you play organizationally. Because if I look at social media and what it is that some of the people who are part of this convention had to say, I think you're not the only one. So if you don't mind my asking, if you can just unpack that for us, what was it about the process and how things were playing out that left you feeling, as a citizen, how would I respond to this? But I know, of course, if I'm representing an organization, there are limitations in terms of how you can behave or what you can even say.
Absolutely. Listen, Cathy, when we are talking about really, you know, as I think it was mentioned in the clip earlier as well, around really the indignity, the triple burden of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and other socioeconomic challenges that we experience in the country. When you're thinking about issues of service delivery, I mean, you have guys in Hammanskraal who don't have water or good quality water, and this has been going on for a while. Issues not just load shedding, but certain communities who've not had access to basic services for a very long time. Most recently, now we have issues of the rule of law with the NPA and SAPS, you know, allegedly being infiltrated. And of course, we know the inextricable link between the rule of law and human rights, where femicide rates, homicide rates, violence against children that are out of this world, environmental degradation, and really, for me, as a South African, when I think of these things, there's a restlessness in the country, there's a frustration, there's a disappointment, there's a disillusionment, you know, where the social contract has been broken. And I speak as a South African in this context because there was a promise in 1994, Cathy, and people had high hopes. And those promises have been broken. and because of actions that happened post 1994, but also because of legacy issues because of the apartheid system. So I think for me it's difficult because I reckon with the suffering and the pain, both individually and collectively, that we've experienced as a country. But at the same time, as somebody who works across different countries, I'm able to kind of have a bigger perspective where I recognize, yes, South Africa is not where it should be, but also when you compare it to other, countries within our region, but also across, the continent at large, we see that there's some progress, but we still have a long way to go for sure. So in as much as I think we want to deal with the bread issues, and I think this came up, in some of the dialogue labs that were mentioned earlier. This again, this tug of war between bread and butter issues versus the brokenness of the country. Listen, South Africa we're broken. There's so much healing, healing the soul of the nation. And often we're trying to figure out which comes first. Do we deal with the bread or do we deal with the brokenness? And this idea of these wounded leaders, these wounded individuals, the incomplete work of our transitional justice processes in the TRC, and the bread and butter issues that we're facing. And all these issues need to be addressed at the same time, because if you're broke, your soul is broken, the soul of the nation is broken, and you have no bread at the same time. That for me is a recipe for disaster.
We're going to continue the conversation, reflecting then on the National Convention. Yeah, we've heard a lot of talk about those dialogue labs. I want to get into how things actually played out within those labs, because we were not in those rooms, but perhaps our guests can help us in understanding how was the conversation formulated, and ultimately, how does the work of these labs feed into what will be some of the final documents, because it's a bottom-up approach, as we're told, right? That whatever we say in those labs and ideas, all of it is going to be collected, but just, how exactly is that work going to play out? For now, we're going to go to the news desk. It is 10:30. Here are your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Onde Lambana, and a very good morning. 7 people have been killed following a major crash involving 2 trucks on the N12 freeway just after the R42 Brockenhand-Spruit Delmas off-ramp in Mpumalanga this morning. A 34-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the death of his girlfriend at Chawela outside Giyani in Limpopo. Police spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says the suspect allegedly stabbed his 36-year-old girlfriend to death yesterday morning. And the municipal manager of Thulamela local municipality in Thohoyandou in Limpopo has resigned amid allegations of corruption in the appointment of service providers. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 17 rand 62 to the dollar, 23 rand 85 to the pound, and 20 rand 59 to the euro. Markets in Asia were firmer at the closing bell. The JSE lower in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are trading weaker. Gold is trading at $3,349. Platinum $1,329 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.72 a barrel.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Weekend View with Bongiwe Zwane. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The soundtrack of your life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Gericka. Shifting your lens with Bertha Charuma. This is SAFM. SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply. This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Cathy Mohlahlana is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. We're reflecting on the National Convention, its outcomes, and what the next steps then are in as far as the national dialogue is concerned. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032 just to also engage with our guests in as far as the process of the National Convention and what unfolded over the 2 days of that convention were. You can call in 086 000 2032. That's for our studio line. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Nonkululeko, I want you to please, if you can, as vividly as possible, explain to us the concept behind the dialogue labs. What happened in those discussion rooms?
I will do it as vividly as I possibly can. But there was so much nuances in the different rooms in terms of the modalities and the discussion points that I don't want to perhaps capture all of that in my experience. However, the dialogue labs that I was in.
Sorry, Nonguleko, before you go forward, was there a particular template that delegates were to follow in those labs, or was it a case of once people are convened in the room, then they decide how things must happen?
Yes, so we did have facilitators with a general outline of how the conversation will be had and what types of outputs people were looking for. But it was necessarily just because the sectors were so particular in their needs, in their constitution, that in some rooms, conversations were even taken over from by different people and led by different people outside of the facilitators, who were still there, however, to ground the meeting so that it remained safe. So yes, there was an outline, but people were allowed to change it in accordance to the needs that were presented in the meeting. But perhaps to give them this overview that you're asking for, what happened in the dialogue labs is essentially that the different thematic groups came together and asked themselves what are the most pressing issues in this theme and what needs to be resolved now for a dialogue to happen. It was quite an emphatic point on our end that the National Convention is not the dialogue. It is an agenda setting, it is how we will lead the dialogue, but we also recognize that in as much as 1,000 is a large number, 1,000 in the face of a country of many millions cannot represent the views and even intellectual capacity of the entire country. So people began to think about how we're going to break this down in the different thematic groups. We had issues for rapid response, issues for radical reform, and issues for healing and healing the nation. And in all of these, people spoke to those points, added to how their sector or their theme rather needs these things, these questions responded to, and then rounded up also with some concerns, which are a point for healing and restoring trust. Because I think, as both my Itumeleng and Noma said, people came in with a lot of apprehension into this system, into this convention, and rightly so. But we know that trust is earned. So how do we move forward to do exactly that?
The convention not being the actual dialogue is an important distinguishing factor. And especially if we think about the way in which the conversation then, or the conversations that are supposed to be taking place, how those are grounded. The issue of discussion documents has come up quite a lot. Where do things stand in as far as discussion documents are concerned? Is there still something that is going to be done? We know that the foundations that had pulled out had already done significant work in terms of putting together discussion documents that would guide part of the process. That yes, these were not the end all and be all of the conversation, but certainly provided some form of context setting for why these conversations are important across the different themes.
So the issue of the discussion documents, I think, as you rightly put it, had already been brought up by some of the foundations that were a part of what was the National Dialogue Preparatory Task Team. However, going into the dialogue, and especially understanding the misgivings that were coming, at least from civil society, I can speak to that, given that I'm from Kagiso Trust, given the misgivings that were, and the mistrust that was coming from society, that this conversation is already preempted with preempted dialogue and preempted outputs and preempted responses. We thought against it to give people a greater chance to be self-diagnosing and self-reliant in those processes and to guide it themselves, to give true meaning to a citizen-led process. However, this is not an anti-intellectual stance, I must say. The different sectors that were represented there hosted an amazing array of minds, both in academia, from the civil society, grassroots, from business and whatnot. So we trust very much that as we hand over to the new steering committee, they will be putting together those packages or those documents for themselves, outlining their own issues, outlining the importance of them, and leading a discussion and problem-solving effort that will be truly reflective and authentic and citizen-led.
Itumeleng, when we think about the work that civil society groups do and various other NGOs, is that sometimes because they are focused on very specific issues, when it comes to the bigger picture, the perspectives around that bigger picture might somewhat be lost because, if I'm focusing, let's say, on education, then education becomes the biggest thing in my world because that's what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. how did you find that context? And this is the broader context, because this is, yes, supposed to, ensure that the experiences, the lived experiences of people are captured. But in the end, it's supposed to come up with this macro view of what is possible and what needs to happen. It might not be specific in the minutest of detail as some of the work being done by these NGOs or organizations is, but certainly would feed into the process. So I'm just curious to know how that was balanced out, because if you are an organization that is focused on particular trends in education, then that is what you will be championing and speaking about. Somebody else who's focusing on feeding schemes is also equally worried about the corruption, everything else that's happening there. Somebody else who's dealing with scholar transport feels equally passionate about, and we're still only in education.
Yeah, and I think that's why we said that this process is a political process, because everyone is coming at it from where they are. But also this process is also going to be a contentious process, because we all think that the issues that are the most important to where we are the ones that are most urgent. But I think inside the dialogue labs, as Nonkululeko said, that we're balancing people from academia and people who are coming learners, that we're coming with their lived experiences, but we also have ministers inside our lab who we're also talking on how we can then use education as a way that we can liberate our country. I do think that even when you look at some of the resolutions that were coming, most of them were not focused on the education issues, but rather more like the culture change and how we engage with government, how we engage civically, so that we're able to strengthen the already existing systems within our education system. Because just to paint a picture for you, Cathy, in the way that we started these dialogues using the meta infrastructure, we started with dreaming, and dreaming is resistance. So this is something that also came up in our panels, that the country is at a point of a polycrisis, that people aren't able to then dream of a new South Africa. And so inside the dialogues, we were able to see already from that beginning of the dreams that we're dreaming of a South Africa that is free, not just from an education point of view, but from a broader point of view. And secondly, we're then grounded down to some of the issues that you're talking about, ECD being one of the issues that came out the most, the literacy issues, but a lot of them are honed down to the lack of political will for government, the lack of people participating in the smaller civic activities like SGBs, and making sure that they go to voting and they take their own governance power. And then lastly, we're speaking about what could then be our rapid responses as a group. And so even though we're coming from different thematics within the education system, what is it that we can do tomorrow after the national dialogues that will actually have an input? And we were hoping that this could be something that people can do and pledge to go and do inside their own spaces, because I don't think it's a crime for people to come at the issues from where they are and what they think is most urgent, but they must always understand that there is a broader goal. And I do think that we were able to land inside those dialogues into this understanding of the broader shaping of our South Africa, even with the trust deficit that was happening inside the rooms between those that are government and those that are at the receiving end of the decisions of government.
Okay, thanks for that. So then, just to be clear, Itumeleng, you had government officials in the room. In some rooms, you also had the ministers for those various departments.
So in our room, we had people from academia. I think the VC of UNISA was part of our room. We didn't have the Minister of Basic Education, but we also had different people who are from research groups, and then other institutes that work in the children's sector and we had learners with people that are parents, SGBs, with people that advocate for the education of those with disabilities. So it was quite a good mix of people.
All right. Thanks for that. I'm going to bring in our callers who want to contribute to this conversation. Lemias Mashile, you are from Sanko. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good, thank you, sir.
Yes, Cathy, we just need to put something on record that as Sanko, a national civic organization, we did declare that we want to participate, but we have never been invited. We were excluded, and somebody decided to put a proxy for us in that convention. Now, what I wanted to raise, Cathy, is that there is a notion that seeks to say this convention is about creating or coming up with a vision of the country moving forward. We really do have a problem with that because our constitution is based on the Freedom Charter, which all of us believe that it is the vision of the country. There is nothing that people can discuss and generate a vision that is not actually within the Freedom Charter. And as a democratic organization as well, having struggled for freedom, we know that our program, the National Democratic Revolution, also brings in elements that are incorporated in the Constitution, which were amplified from the Freedom Charter.
Let me say, the convention or the dialogue, just to be clear?
It's actually both, because the convention is leading to the dialogue.
Okay.
But we are being told that it's about creating a vision for the future. And we therefore know that the Freedom Charter actually has that. And again, is that we are told that it will be bottom up. But with the Freedom Charter, we knew that people did not know what people want. Hence, the Freedom Charter was started from corners everywhere in the country. But now with this dialogue, we have got many reports that are sitting in offices gathering dust on what the people want. And so we expect that all those reports, they are only capable at the research level to produce a program that may be 75% complete, to actually take the country forward, implementing the prescripts of the Freedom Charter and the Constitution.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let me thank you for that contribution there from Sanko. And again, the topic of inclusion comes up. Who is invited? Who isn't invited? Who is determining that? One would think that part of what would happen in a process of this nature is that it is not only about invitee, people who are invited, but it is also that there's space for people who are requesting an invite, especially where the invite has not arrived. Anonymous, you're in Kanana. Good morning.
No, thank you very much, Kate. Let me say one thing first and foremost about the national dialogue, is that maybe civil society needs a national dialogue so that they are able to convert their views on a broader platform like this one and shape government agents. But government does not exist. The problem we have in South Africa is that we have got a government that is rooted in the culture of talking rather than the culture of doing. Government is fully conversant of the scale of the challenges the country is confronted with. They are aware of the practical solutions that are needed to take the country out of this quagmire. The only problem is that there is no political willingness to resolve the challenges that the country is confronted with. Let's take, for instance, in education. We know for a fact, Katie, that if you look at all our schools, their infrastructure is dilapidated, the teachers are not at an adequate level. They can't even teach the curriculum to the children. We know that that is a problem. When government is supposed to be developing a program to upskill our teachers and ensure that they compensate them well, they call for this dialogue. If you look at the challenges of crime, government is fully aware that police are under-resourced. Government is aware that our detectives are not adequately trained. Government is fully aware that raga elements have taken over the South African police service, but they don't want to resolve those problems. They know that we need to ensure that police are given all the necessary support in terms of infrastructure to be able to do their job. We need to ensure that we put technology, modern technology, to help in combating crime. But we do not do that. What we instead do, we choose to have a national dialogue. Let's take, for instance, local government, which we regard as the cold face of service delivery in this country. We don't need to be talking about the problems of local government forever. Let's take the dialogue, for instance. We need a bottom-up approach. We need this dialogue to start at the work base, where we've got councillors, where everybody resides, to say, let's talk about what are the problems. But we're not doing that. Okay. We know that we deploy our best people. The best people are not deployed in local government. The people we have there at local government are incompetent, are corrupt, they don't understand what they are doing. As a result, they are unable to deliver services to our people today.
Okay, Anonymous, thanks for that. Quite a mouthful there. Butana in Rosebank, good morning.
Good morning, my sister, and good morning to your guests. Yet again, the ANC succeeded to manipulate South Africans, making sure the attention is away from them, making sure they are not going to answer about corruption and the destruction of this country that they've done. The remarks of the president asking why the clinics are running, there's no medicine in clinics, why the taps are running dry. He's asking those questions. He said the South Africans must answer those questions. Why the storage is running all over the street? We have to answer those questions. But the question that does not ask is why the SOEs were looted by ANC. Why they were looted. Why they destroyed the railway line. Why are we not safe in our communities? They're not. So we have to be focused. ANC keeping people busy there. It's so unfortunate. It's so frustrating. That is why one of your callers last week is telling us that South Africans are not sophisticated. ANC people are sophisticated. By the way, Cathy, when we are associated with crooks, can I not name you as a crook? When you associate with crooks, when you are dining with crooks, can I not associate you with crooks or thieves or drug dealers? So we're kept here, kept busy by ANC diverting away, turning the clock back.
Butana, very frustrated. Let's leave it there. Magdalene in Mangaung, you'll be my last call on this issue.
Morning, Cathy, and your interviewees. Cathy, point is that we've got two types of organizations in South Africa, which are representing the societies in South Africa. We've got the civil organizations, and we've got the civic organizations. There are differences in those things. Point is, the civil organization is the one which is financially supported by the government. And the civic organizations are those who are trying by all means to bring government to account and be responsible for service delivery to its citizens. So for the president, not much to consider in inviting at least 80% of the civic organizations in order to bring stability in South Africa and to bring redress in South Africa. It is because those people are trying by all means to bring what's supposed to have been done long time ago, past 30 years ago. They are trying to say people we voted you into power in order for you to run the democracy in South Africa and to bring to point that South Africans are highly considered and serviced according to your own freedom charter and your own public policies. Point is, Cathy, I'm in Mangaung Service Delivery Forum. I'm also in MCC. I started the MCC. I was at the forefront. Even during the time of shutdown, I was at the forefront. Point is, Cathy, most of us are deliberately chased out of the government departments because we know too much. We know the policies, we know the freedom charter, and we want them to be implemented accordingly. So according to ANC, that is not their intention of implementing what they came to buy our votes with. Okay. And those people were not supposed to be invited anyway in this dialogue because.
Okay, Magdalene, I think you have made the point, and it's such an important distinction there that Magdalene makes. Nonkululeko, I'll give you the opportunity to respond within the remaining minute that we have.
I appreciate it, Cathy. I think for me, especially as a part of civil society, there's the point that I want to address fundamentally is why the national dialogue is happening for us as civil society members, as regular citizens. And it's not necessarily because the government doesn't know the issues. I think everyone knows the issues. It's fundamentally because we, the people, have the answers. The caller spoke about the underfunding of police, but it's only community members who tell you exactly what that underfunding looks like. The shortage of social workers or the shortage of trauma centers for victims of rape or things of that matter, what the specific needs of that community are. And two, I think even as he makes the point, he knows what his community needs. And I think that the idea that we throw that to government to fix and to dictate to us what fixing looks like is not going to be to our benefit, as it hasn't been for a long, long time. We can't keep on waiting for a leadership to come. We don't need more leaders. We need each other right now more than anything. And on the question of who's invited, which is a very important question, it's a 6-month process with with both ward and village level dialogues and citizen-led dialogues targeting a minimum of 10 million people. And these are not 10 million people who agree, who are on anyone's payroll, who even like each other. But it's 10 million people who believe that they have solutions for this country and are coming together to make those happen.
Okay.
And I think that for me is the most fundamental point I'd like to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming onto the show and sharing some of your experiences being part of the National Convention. I think we've also heard from the views from our listeners in as far as how they're viewing this process. It's time for your latest news update.
Thank you, Cathy. On the top stories, 10 killed in road crashes in Mpumalanga and Air Canada flight strike continues. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana and a very good morning. 10 people have been killed in 2 separate road crashes in Mpumalanga's Highveld region this morning. A truck rammed into a stationary bus truck that was parked on the side of the N12 road between Delmas and Emalahleni. 6 people were killed and 6 others sustained serious injuries. In another crash, 4 people died when their vehicle lost control and overturned on the R547 road between Kinross and Kriel. 2 other passengers were injured. Provincial Community Safety, Security and License spokesperson Moedi Musi says the injured people have been taken to nearby hospitals.
This happened when 4 people lost their lives when a vehicle that they were traveling in seemingly lost control and overturned on the side of the road, while on the other hand, 6 people were killed when a truck bus that they were being transported in, while it was stationary on the road and on N12 between Emalahleni and Delmas. An articulated truck crashed into it. The 6 were killed instantly, while 6 others sustained serious injuries.
The Eastern Cape Transport Department has advised motorists using the N2 between Mthatha and Dutwa to expect delays as the road is closed due to a protest. Provincial Transport spokesperson Udati Bingose says the residents are protesting over the provision of water in the area. Bingose says relevant authorities are on the scene to calm protesters and reopen the road.
We wish to warn road users about this protest that has affected the flow of traffic on the N2. It's one of those protests that have very little to do with roads, but they have decided to target the roads to express their anger at those who are protesting. Our officers are on the ground working ever so hard to defuse the protest and get the traffic flowing again.
A 34-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the death of his girlfriend at Shawela outside Giani, Limpopo. Police spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says the suspect allegedly stabbed his 36-year-old girlfriend to death yesterday morning. The incident has led to a protest by residents today calling for the arrest of the suspect. Mashaba says the suspect was arrested at another section of Shawela.
The 34-year-old suspect who allegedly stabbed and killed his girlfriend in Shawela village, Giani Policing Precinct on Sunday, the 17th of August 2025, was traced and apprehended this morning, the 18th of August 2025, while hiding in Saulan village, another section of Shawela village. Lieutenant General Thembi Hadebe has commended the investigating team for their rapid response and also expressed appreciation to community members who cooperated with the police by providing positive information leading to the suspect's apprehension.
The municipal manager of Thulamela local municipality in Thohoyandou in Limpopo has resigned amid allegations of corruption in the appointment of service providers. Masala Makumele resigned on Tuesday last week, a day before his disciplinary hearing, which was scheduled for Wednesday. Makumele was suspended for alleged corruption in the appointment of contractors for maintenance, regraveling and rehabilitation of streets. Michael Makungo reports.
The Thulamela municipality received 28 million rand from National Treasury for disaster emergency relief funding. Mark Omole, who was then municipal manager, allegedly appointed service providers without following proper processes. The National Treasury then lodged investigations and recommended that a criminal case be opened against Makumole. The municipality says it will comment on the matter after a special council sitting to be convened this week. Makumole was not available for comment. Michael Makungo, SABC, Polokwane.
Gauteng Roads and Transport MEC Kitibone Diale Tlabela is expected to meet with Maponya Mall management and law enforcement officers in Soweto today. This follows the brutal killing of 27-year-old e-hailing driver Mthokozisi Mvelase last Wednesday. Mvelase was gunned down allegedly by disgruntled taxi operators before his vehicle as well as another e-hailing vehicle were torched. The incident sparked outrage in the community, resulting in protests around the iconic mall where the incident occurred. Department spokesperson Lesiba Mpia.
So the MEC is meeting with the mall managers, including representative of stakeholders, just to touch on the issues, the resolutions that were made to promote peace and stability, to also promote the fact that the economic impact that the mall has within the area of Soweto and in Gauteng goes unhindered.
Air Canada flight attendants are continuing their strike, defying a government order to return to work. The airline began suspending flights on Thursday last week after it reached an impasse with the union representing its cabin crew over what the union calls poverty wages and unpaid labour. On Wednesday, the union representing around 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants issued a 72-hour strike notice, resulting in a lockout notice issued by the airline. The BBC's Orlando Diallo reports.
Canada's government had used a contentious labour law to intervene in the strike action by Air Canada's cabin crew, arguing the disruption was too damaging to the national economy. But in an unusual step, the union has rejected this demand, calling the order blatantly unconstitutional. It said flight attendants were being forced to do hours of unpaid work, including assisting passengers prior to boarding. Plans by Air Canada to resume flights have now been pushed back to Monday evening. But with cabin crew refusing to return, it's unclear how these could be operated.
Recapping the top story, 10 people have been killed in 2 separate road crashes in Mpumalanga's Highveld region this morning. A truck rammed into a stationary bus truck that was parked on the side of the N12 road between Delmas and Emalahleni. I am on Dilambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.4 FM in Durban. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Cathy, you know, each person in this country with understanding knows what the issues of this country is. And each one knows what they want for a better life. Yes, the dialogue had started and it's happening, but I still think it's completely unnecessary. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's excluding a lot of people. We didn't see any diversity. And yes, you know, ministers are still controlling it. But this is a campaign for the ANC. It's just that this dialogue needed to happen for Cyril Ramaphosa because the then government of 30 years didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to all the listeners. I think my take on this one is that South Africa is failing dismally on law enforcement. What Santaco is doing, what the taxi drivers are doing, it's illegal. And if it's illegal, why are the police not doing anything about it? Because you ask yourself, can the police see these things happening? Because they're happening. Traffic officers are driving past. They're also parking with them on the roads, but they're allowing them to stop private cars. Do they have the authority to do that? They don't. And when you look at everything else that is happening in South Africa, we're failing with enforcement of the law and consequence management. If we get that right, most of the things can be fixed.
Good morning, Cathy. I'm Svido in Watem. The national dialogue is just kicking the can down the road, hoping that things will fall into place on their own. But the leadership of this country knows that to fix things in this country, you need to deal with 3 aspects. First is the crime that's rife, and once you deal with crime, you'll also automatically deal with corruption that people are crying about out there. 2, the issue of immigration, deal with that because everyone is complaining about illegal immigration that's in this country. 3, deal or do away with cadre deployment as well as tender system. Thank you.
Hi, Cathy and your team and lovely South Africans. It's Eddie from Ondasres. Whether Santaco denies or not, what is circulating, really it will be said that people are told what to do with their own private cars. It's not Santaco that is paying our private cars, if that's the case. And you know what? I will never be told by anyone if I'm driving with my family or driving with anyone in my car. I will never be told by any. But this boils back to law enforcement. You see, people see that there's no law enforcement in this country, so they think they can do whatever that they like. It boils to that. Thank you very much.
We spend a lot of time looking for deals, but we don't invest the same time in our health. Your health buys you more time with the people you love. So who are you staying healthy for, and how can you improve your health? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that rewards you for living healthier with lower premiums and more cover. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guard Risk Life, a licensed life insurer, FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
Bafana Bafana will host Nigeria in a FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifier at the Toyota Stadium on Tuesday, 9 September at 6 p.m. Tickets are now available nationwide and online from 70 Rand for adults and 40 Rand for children at all Ticket Pro outlets, including Spar, Postnet, and all petrol stations. Get your tickets early to avoid disappointment. Come in Bafana Bafana supporter gear, ready to sing for a win. Gates will open at 3 p.m. If you are not in Bloemfontein, catch the game on SABC2. For more information, visit safa.net and at Bafana Bafana on all social media channels.
Do you know what's hiding behind the colorful packaging of unhealthy food? Big food companies target children with unhealthy packaged foods that hide high levels of sugar, salt, and fat, which could lead to heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. But the truth is hidden from consumers. Front-of-package warning labels are a proven solution to help consumers make informed decisions. The government must act now. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front-of-package warning labels. Sign the petition on heala.org, HEALA.org, by the 30th of September.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, let's get then into the final hour of the show. Our conversation this morning is going to focus on the Mistra Coalition Barometer Edition 2. And this is following off the first edition that looked at coalitions in terms of coalition government from 2023 to 2025. And it also then looks at the 2024 to 2025 in as far as the national and provincial coalitions are concerned. So let me correct myself there. The first period covered by the Coalitions Barometer 1 covers 2021 to 2023, and it researched the rapid expansion of local coalition governments following that 2021 local government elections, even though coalitions, I believe, can be traced all the way back to 2016. Our guest, who is also the author or the lead author for this barometer, Professor Susan Boysen, Emeritus Professor at the University of Witwatersrand and also a research consultant for Mistra. Prof. Boysen, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners.
Let's talk about perhaps what the core objective in developing these reports is for Mistra.
Cathy, we regularly realize that this is such a pivotal and very important, interesting period in South African political transitioning and democratic development. And Mistra and I then as the consultant for Mistra on the project really want to document the details of this process. And we hopefully, these documents, these Mr. Coalition barometers, will hopefully, and they really should, serve as public resources that are freely available, that can be downloaded online, as a public resource, as the documentation of the state of coalition politics as it unfolds. There is so much information. We have so much public debate on national and provincial, and to some extent, especially courtesy of your program, also about the local. But there isn't one central record. One can obviously not encapsulate absolutely everything that's important in one document, even if the main report is around 500 pages. But it is a useful, systematically compared analysis of 70 plus case studies of local government, and then in the early stages, the 3 provincial coalition governments in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and Northern Cape, and of course the national government. So there is a lot of valuable primary information encapsulated in here. Of course, we also, when one summarizes, when one synthesizes the trends, one gives a better personal, scholarly, hopefully, interpretation to it. But the base value of this document is really in its recording of the details, data, systematically compare data.
Part of what you then do as the outcome of this work is to develop what are the emerging cultures within the politics, but within governance. Often there isn't this distinction made, Professor Boyson, and it almost seems to be at the heart of the problems that we face with why we have such poor service delivery, especially at a local level. There's this conflation of politics and governance, and the two are so closely linked, so closely intertwined. How then do you, at the end of it, say this is what needs to happen for efficiencies within governance to be improved? Because that's what people need. They need a more efficient, effective government.
Yes, indeed. And you put your finger on such a big part of the core problem, and that is the entwinement of politics and governance. And we try to distill the lessons as to what is to be done. But part of the lesson, too, is that we have to be mature about and live with the politics ingrained into the coalition governance process, because it is never going to go away. It is this domain where political parties compete, and they compete through governance, good or bad, and both tell their own story. And as long as we understand exactly how the politics works, when it is driven politically, when the politics is the side motive, then we stand a better chance, I believe, to help correct or at least improve governance as well. Because in South Africa, it's so intense, the level to which parties compete politically. It is a transitional period. It is the end in South Africa of a period of basically 3 decades, even if there were coalition governments scattered here and there, but the end of a period of one-party dominance within a multi-party democracy system. And this is a big development from the governing part, predominant, hitherto governing party, the ANC. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of attempt to use coalitions as a platform to contain further development, further being plunged further into more coalition governments or deeper coalition governments. And other parties then use opposition parties across the board, and in particular also the DA, use coalition politics then as a platform to compete for a better stake in future government. So one also has to understand coalition government in South Africa really as a substitute or a supplement to election campaigns that is really an election campaign by another name. And this is the reality of part of it. And sadly, some political parties, if not all political parties, are only going to learn the bigger lessons if the voters then through elections, in the interim perhaps through protests and demands, show them that how they do things is not adequate. But the political parties themselves, as the study also shows, in hardly any cases have that maturity to realize their infighting, their next coalition replacement substitute is worsening problems rather than improving, and that citizens are not forever going to be content with that. So it is this inherent contestational character of coalition politics in South Africa that colors so much of not just the politics of the era, but the governance of the era. It's contestational. Coalitions compete with one another, even if the political parties pretend to or try to focus on serious governance issues. The contestation, the competition, and opportunities, spotting of opportunities to assert a replacement coalition is just there all the time.
Yeah.
And yes, sadly, governance does suffer when political parties cannot come together in a coalition government, say, elections are behind us, let's now singularly focus on a coherent, convergent governance project. Let's do X, Y, to Z, and that is it. The contestation just interferes in these processes all of the time.
I'm quite interested in one of the key trends that you've picked up on, which describes then the local government coalition politics as having stabilized, at least within the period under review, which is 2023 to 2025. And that, from a national point of view, you describe the ANC as effectively being the biggest winner from this government of national unity. Unpack those two for me, please.
Yes, certainly, Cathy. At local level, we have certainly seen in the period 23 to 25 that there were fewer coalition changes than we observed from 2021 to 2023, which was, of course, that first period of local government just after the elections. In this period, originally, there was a broad interpretation by political parties that the voter verdict was against ANC, that even if the vote was scattered among quite a number of political parties, that the verdict was the voters do not want to see the ANC in government anymore. The political opposition parties and political parties generally gradually shifted from that view. And within a few months of the 2021 elections, actually, we saw that the kingmakers in that process, and the EFF was one of the big ones that held in many municipalities a significant chunk of the vote, big enough to swing the balance of power, often with the help of a further few small parties, very small parties in that case. But it had the power to switch the governing coalitions between the big parties. In KwaZulu-Natal, IFP, realignment, IFP, the essential disappearance of the NFP, local government, we saw similar trends. And the ANC, of course, has been very shrewd, astute probably, at using its entrenched power position within the state and in the local state to enhance its hold on power. And many of the small parties gradually then again moved away from the DA as the main opposition axis of power back to the ANC and often stabilized there. In many cases, the ANC also just simply needed small top-up by micro parties or a handful of the very small parties in some of the many small councils in South Africa, local councils. The ANC would only need the vote of an independent or one small community party to assert a majority. And the ANC has been very good at lining up these small parties to support it. And several of these small parties, of course, are also evident in their positions in the national government. We can think of Patriotic Alliance, for example. Interestingly, the IFP has also been aligning strongly with the ANC, in contrast with pre-election alliance anticipation between ISP and DA, as there had been in the past in some places. So the ANC has been the winner in many of these cases, of I should say quite a number of these local municipalities where only needed top-up, and then there was a small shift here and there, enough to give us an outright majority. In a few of the municipalities too, where the ANC is the biggest party, and the DA and its access of associates, does not have a matching prospect to assert its own alternative majority. In several of these cases, the ANC has just been allowed to get on with minority government. And yes, in confidence and supply, often by the economic freedom fighters in these arrangements, when votes are done on, especially on budgets, they will come in and support the ANC, as was also happening in Gauteng provincial coalition government, which is a minority coalition, by the way, but when the EFF comes in and gives support, for example, on budget votes, then there is an outright majority. So there are so many permutations of how these majorities work in these councils, and these are just a few of the ways in which it has been done and ways in which the ANC to date, at least up to the results from the 2021 elections, probably in the late next year we'll get the next verdict, but in a way in which they have preserved themselves in power.
We're going to continue the conversation with Professor Susan Boyson, looking then at the emerging trends within our coalition politics framework. But I think also, hopefully there'll be some time for us to look at then how do we improve efficiencies? What are the alternative pathways to where we are today, and how do we begin to unlock those pathways? For now, it's 11:30. Time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, 10 people have been killed in 2 separate road crashes in Mpumalanga's Highveld region this morning. A truck rammed into a stationary bus truck that was parked on the side of the Antolf Road between Delmas and Emalahledi. Mpumalanga Education MEC Lindy Masida has emphasized the need for collaboration with the police service to combat gangsterism and violence in schools. And the Edgar Lungu burial case has been postponed indefinitely in the Pretoria High Court. This after the Lungu family filed their leave to appeal bid in the Constitutional Court. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Cathy Mohlahlana is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We continue our conversation on the show this morning, reflecting then on that MISTRA report and the outcomes of the Coalition's Barometer research. Prof, what was interesting going into the 2024 elections was there was a lot of talk around a coalition's framework and whether that was needed in order to stabilize how these coalition agreements were playing out. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that stability has been achieved even without the framework. But what then has changed in terms of how these political players are engaging with each other?
Cathy, we can see as local government elections are approaching that they try to focus more on service delivery issues, on correcting so many of the serious mishaps and overwhelming problems that we find in local government in particular. And yet the key issues, I would say, and that is our income base and infrastructure maintenance and development, those are not taking place. And to relate this to your question of how the political parties relate to one another, I think I see a little more convergence between the parties, focus on the serious core issues, but that, and also knowing that the frame will center on the issues of service delivery. And yet
Professor Boyson? All right, it looks like we've lost Professor Boyson on the line. We'll try to get her back up, but as we do that, perhaps just trying to then run through some of the findings of that particular report. It also talks about the parties, at least those that are members of coalition governance, showing a greater and a growing awareness that their coalition involvement may threaten their electoral futures. So they see the link between how the coalition plays itself out and their future electoral prospects. Susan Boyson, I understand you're back on the line. Prof, good morning again.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you indeed.
Yeah. You know, the idea of the parties being aware of the fact that their futures hang on whether or not the coalitions are successful. It's an interesting one, Prof, because if we're to look at what came out of the 21 report and then look at the national government, and I know we're not necessarily comparing apples with apples here, but to what extent really do they see their political futures tied with how the coalition fares? Because if we look at what has happened, let's say, in the city of Tshwane or in the city of Johannesburg, where we have seen this revolving door of mayors, one doesn't get a sense that the parties that are part of these processes are necessarily feeling the impact of losing support from voters.
Yes, indeed. It's so intertwined, and it will really just determine the fate of political parties at the local level. And once they fade at political level, at the local level, it inevitably brings big messages for provincial and national. We can think back of the local government elections of 2016, the major earthquake that the serious decline in support for the ANC as predominant party across these three metros in Gauteng, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, and Johannesburg. We saw that as a big signal, bringing the message that the ANC is in trouble. And that was then very clear in the 2019 elections and 2021 local elections. That trend evolved further. so we should take the trends in local government extremely seriously. They do not always act as a harbinger of things to come at other levels. But when we see some results emerging across several municipalities, sometimes the pattern starts forming. And we know the 2016 pattern was a big indication. And I won't be surprised if next year, possibly in the late next year or early 2027, local government elections will further extend the trends that we have seen in local government and then provincial and national so far. And it will also probably be a very big indication as to if the ANC then continues to decline, and I think we see that quite a bit in polling results in local government by-elections, not all by-elections, but in quite a number of them, that there is a further decline in this ANC. I think the forthcoming local government elections will give a clear indication as to what is happening in terms of a post-ANC dominance dispensation, various iterations on that in South Africa. And so the interlinked nature is very, very important. And we know the previous local government elections were already fought largely over the nitty-gritty, the granular detail of service delivery. Gone were the days where voters would vote for party images and liberation struggle history or liberal opposition, whatever the case might have been. We know last year's national and provincial elections often came back to the nitty-gritty issues that sometimes have a better place in local government. But the interconnectivity of the levels or spheres, some like to call it, of government in South Africa, that is one of the big election issues of the time. And it really stands out and it makes or breaks parties also at national and provincial level, even if it is largely local government functions that have to be executed.
Yeah.
Because we know, of course, and interestingly, I've picked up recently more interventions in terms of, I believe it's Section 142 of the Constitution, for example, in Buffalo City, not a coalition municipality, but in that case where national government sends in expertise and help to get things right at local government or metropolitan level. And so we know in KwaZulu-Natal, the provincial government there is going to have conducting many initiatives to try to bring local government up to a higher level, not yet successfully, one might add. There are so many problems there, but there are very concrete actions there as in a few of the other provinces. So I think national government is realizing that much at the local level is not going to self-correct or correct through minor interventions, but that major overhauls are required. And yes, we know that the government at one stage played, if not continuously, still plays with a district development model formula. But we have seen that the experiments on that front have not really been successful, and there may have been a few projects that could have been were executed without intervention, without involvement by very dysfunctional minor local governments, but that has just not been the answer.
Sure.
So it is really a crisis of government in general.
Did you find any connection, Prof, between the size of the municipality and the level of instability? Because if I think about the big metros that are being run by coalition governments, you find that there is a greater sense of instability in that Johannesburg, how many mayors have we had since the last local government elections, right? Same probably or similar could apply to what we see in Pretoria. And we know that these are also metros that are in charge of very big budgets. And so there's a lot more at stake from a resource point of view than in a smaller municipality, especially one that isn't a metro. Did you find any connection at all?
That's very interesting. Not necessarily, but it plays out in very different ways. In few cases, in very small municipalities, and one gets municipalities with 7 or 9 or 15 councillors as opposed to be the several hundreds in the big metros. And in a small municipality, it is sometimes possible just for one councillor to change a lines, or for one party to lose a municipal by-election, one seat, and to get a coalition change. And there it can happen quite seamlessly, and it has happened in quite a number of these cases. But then a metropolitan side, and this fascinating, again, the issue of the small and micro parties. And with micro parties, I mean those ones who get 1, maybe 2, sometimes 3, but 1 or 2 seats in a council comprising hundreds of councillors. And because there are so many of these small micro parties in these councils, and they come into the coalition politics without serious accountability to a constituency, without elaborate policy positions, knowing that being in a council and in a municipal government, in the executive of a municipal government, is the highest they will ever rise in their party political lives. And those small parties often hand together, and they are courted by the big parties. The ANC has also been particularly successful in doing this, possibly because it has a lot of patronage that is available to offer, in not just municipally but also national government, and to bring together a whole group of these parties has become a big part of the practice of coalition government, manufacturing of coalition majorities in the metros. It takes a lot of hard work to do that, and the big parties, spend a lot of time to manage these coalitions to make sure these micro parties with their 1 or 2 councillors stay on board and stay loyal and stay cognizant of what side of the bread their bread is buttered.
Okay.
And it's just interesting that this type of local coalition politics have been rife, especially since 2016. But we've seen that national government has probably learned from that as well. We know that nationally, and the report also refers to that, there are currently alternative coalitions, and the ANC at the time of the budget crisis nationally also played with that, constructed an alternative majority. A bare majority was just over the 50%, but they could at one stage proceed with the budget with the help of these small parties, despite the fact that the DA, the EFF, and the MK party were all against it. So that type of majority manufacturing that we have noticed at local government has certainly rubbed off at national government as well.
Okay.
So yes, there is, and back to your question on local government, there is certainly instability on both sides, both in small councils and in big councils. And very importantly, you refer to the coalitions framework. One of the continuous issues there is whether there should be a threshold for representation in councils, in legislatures, and then also in councils. In the local councils, we have definitely seen that the absence of a threshold has enhanced instability in those councils? A very interesting question is also that
Prof?
should South Africa's electoral system change nationally, whether there could be stability implications there as well.
We're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time. Professor Susan Boyson, and she, of course, is the author of this particular report alongside two co-authors. Okay, that's where we leave it for today on The Talking Point. Show back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
What is Overtrail? Is it off the beaten path, over the edge of comfort, or the thrill of the road less taken? It's over every bridge, every obstacle, every trail, and over to that view that takes your breath away. Overtrail means going further, exploring deeper, surrounded by the comfort and sophistication of a luxury SUV. It's this spirit that inspired the Overtrail project. Experience Overtrail in the LX and GX range. Lexus. Experience amazing.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Hey SA, entries for FlySafe's Business Booster are closing soon. So if you're a small local business that needs help taking off, enter at flysafe.co.za, tell us about your business, and you could be one of 6 standout enterprises to win 10 return business class flights plus brand exposure across our various platforms. Whether you're mixing, matching, crafting, or inventing, we want to help your business skyrocket. FlySafe, for the love of fly. T's and C's apply.
SFM's award-winning drama department presents another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope, the autobiography of Dr. Sam Motsuenyane. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Events like these also influence the attitude of NAFCOC members towards the Bophuthatswana government. They feared that my life was under threat while I remained in that area. In fact, after our house was firebombed, a lot of our friends urged us to leave the area and go to live elsewhere. I, however, felt differently as I believed that there was nowhere to hide. Even if I went elsewhere, I could still be followed if the intent was to eliminate me. I therefore felt safer where I was. For the best part of 1986 until 1987, I was living in a caravan my friends had organized for me and my family just behind the destroyed house. The guest house which I have recently built is in memory of that caravan. It stands on the exact spot where the caravan stood. In rebuilding our house, we had to start from the foundations because of the extent of the damage from the explosion. As Christians, we very quickly looked ahead and accepted that we could not do anything about what had happened. Since that incident of the bombing of our house, we have not really had anything as catastrophic happening to us, except for a frightening event which took place in 2005. 5 men armed with guns entered our house and ordered my wife and I to lie down on the sofas in the TV room. They then demanded money. Someone who came to visit us while this was happening, unaware of what was taking place, was also ordered to lie down in the lounge. They asked to see our safe, and my wife told them that there was no safe in the house. They wanted to know how on earth we could build such a house and not have a safe. They insisted that there must be a safe somewhere in the house. My wife then, in desperation, threw the keys of the wardrobe at them and told them to look inside to see what money they could find. She had some money there, and I also had money in my pocket as well. Most of the money that I had was not mine, but belonged to the Winterfeld Citrus Project. We were due to have a Farmer's Day harvest celebration on the following day, and I had cash with me to buy some refreshments for the occasion. When they searched me, they found 8,000 rand cash in my pocket, They then searched the wardrobe and found 6,000 rand. Finally, they walked away with a cash amounting to 14,000 rand in total. Although we lost some money, my wife and I thank God for having protected our lives from the thugs who could have shot and killed us. When the story about the robbery at our house was publicized in the media, we received many calls and messages of sympathy from different places and people. Patrice Motsepe, then president of NAFCOC, and whom I regard as my son, graciously sent me a personal check to the amount equivalent to the total of the cash that we had lost. It was after this incident that we installed the security gate that now controls who comes onto our property. Before then, the gate was always open, and anybody could come in and out as and when they wanted. Chapter 14. My Journey to Parliament. As should be apparent by now, my background is not quite political, but in all my years as president of NAFCOC, I have had very close relationships with political leaders. I personally was a member of the ANC before it was banned, and when it was banned, I used my African name as a surname. I was not really at the forefront, but I supported the broad principle for which the movement stood, which was to deliver the freedom of my people in South Africa. Like Mandela, I felt that I could die for that. I believe that every forward-looking black South African in those days aspired to be free. As a young man, I used to attend political meetings, but I was never a member of any of the policy-making structures of the ANC. I joined the church and other social organizations where I featured prominently. In the 1950s, when the nationalist government began to seriously impose its oppressive policies on our people, the black youth, myself included, became more and more politicized. We observed as time passed that the scope for free expression of ideas became narrower. You could not express your thoughts without being threatened by those in power. I was fortunate that I was very actively involved with organizations like ANSCA ANSCA, which removed me from direct political participation. When I became the leader of NAFCOC in the late 1960s, I expressed very strong political views which were reflected in my speeches. I would not yield to oppression, and I did not want to be seen as having sold out my nation. Contacts with ANC in exile. When the 21st NAFCOC conference adjourned in 1985, the executive had a mandate to meet with the African National Congress in Lusaka. I was fortunate to meet with Mr. Oliver Tambo, president of the ANC in London, before the end of that year. In addition to having other commitments in London, I had a memorandum which had been drafted after the 1985 conference to deliver to the ANC. We talked briefly about things that needed changing in the country and the role that NAFCOC should play in bringing about this change. The memorandum was presented to a senior official of the African National Congress, Mr. Mzwai Piliso. I coincidentally met Mr. Tambo as I was boarding a plane to Lusaka on a subsequent visit to London. I was extremely happy to join Mr. Tambo on the plane to Lusaka as he was returning to his base. I was on that occasion going to see my relatives in Lusaka as my eldest brother had lived and died there. His family was still living in Lusaka. I was booked into the economy section of the plane, which is what I could afford at that time. But Mr. Tambo was, to my surprise, sitting in the first-class section of the aircraft. During the flight to Lusaka, Mr. Tambo was able to persuade the airline staff to move me temporarily to where he was sitting in the first-class section so that we could have a discussion. I ended up sitting in the first class for a greater part of the flight. We both agreed that there was a need for closer consultation and communication between our two organizations. My brother Moses had left South Africa for Lusaka in the early 1950s, at a time when Zambia was still called Northern Rhodesia. He had left with a white man for whom he was working as a builder. When he got to northern Rhodesia, he saw opportunities to acquire land and establish himself there as a farmer. At the time when the country got its independence in the mid-1960s, the white man returned to South Africa. But my brother chose to stay and eventually became an entrepreneur in that area. Later, he played an important role in welcoming many of the ANC cadres who went into exile to that country. The ANC cadres called him the old man. He owned a big house where some of the comrades were accommodated. He also became a member of the ANC and a very loyal supporter of the movement. His son is still in Lusaka, but the greater part of his family has since returned to South Africa, home. In 1986, I led a NAFCOC delegation to Lusaka to initiate high-level discussions with the ANC about the formulation of an appropriate future economic policy in South Africa. Of great concern to NAFCOC was what the ANC would do differently when they returned home. We also wanted to iron out any points of difference in policy that may have existed between our organizations regarding future economic development in the country. I believe that on this occasion, we had very fruitful discussions and were indeed accorded high respects by the ANC, to the extent that we each chaired different sessions of our meetings. The spirit which prevailed was overall a very good and positive one. Our NAFCOC delegation was able to reach important agreements with the ANC, most of which were reflected in my presidential address delivered at the 22nd Annual Conference of NAFCOC held at the Good Hope Center in Cape Town in 1986. The comprehensive report on the Lusaka meeting with the ANC was also presented and discussed at that conference. As the press had widely publicized the message that NAFCOC was going to discuss a report on its discussion with the ANC, the huge conference hall at the Good Hope Center was packed to capacity, filled not only by our members, but also by guests from far and near. At the end of my annual presidential address, which took 2 hours to present, I almost broke down as the delegates spontaneously rose to their feet to give me a standing ovation. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and anxiety as to what NAFCOC should do next. Indeed, 1986 was a very turbulent year politically. After discussions, the conference finally took a resolution to continue its relationship and discussions with the ANC. From that time on, the two organizations grew much closer.
That was another episode of the book, A Testament of Hope, the autobiography of Dr. Sam Mohlahlana. The book is available online on www.kmmr.co.za, KMMR Publishers, and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursday on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Samson Kumalo. Technical production, Wiseman Manele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 18th of August, 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamweno. Coming up in the next hour.
The more pertinent improvement attained were increasing severance package pay from 2 weeks remuneration completed year of service to 4 weeks remuneration for each completed year of service.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, says it has reached an improved severance package deal with tyre manufacturer Goodyear and the existence of ghost workers in the education sector under the spotlight. Coming up in sport.
Bafana must win. The Proteas look to change to the ODIs. I'm going to ignore the Springboks, but I am bringing back the soundbite for no particular reason.
Why are you ignoring the Springboks?
No, I'm just ignoring them.
Okay. I think they needed that, but anyway, we'll chat later. And that, of course, John Jericho with more sporting details in the second half of the show. In the meantime, let us know what's on your mind. 41391, that's the SMS line number. Charged at R1.50 per SMS. You can also get in touch via X at SABC News_radio, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming your way in this Monday edition of Update at Noon. First, though, let's bring you up to speed with the latest news with Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. On the top stories, NUMSA reaches an improved deal with tyre manufacturer Goodyear, and 10 killed in road crashes in Mpumalanga. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The National Union of Metal Workers says it's reached an improved severance deal with the tyre manufacturer Goodyear following the closure of its Kariega plant in the Eastern Cape. In June, the company initiated a Section 189A process to restructure its manufacturing operations in Kariega, which has resulted in over 900 job losses. For several weeks, NUMSA and Goodyear have been negotiating better severance packages for workers affected. NUMSA General Secretary Irvin Jim says the settlement agreement was concluded on Friday.
NUMSA succeeded in attaining a substantial improvement on the grossly unfair minimum package which Goodyear wished to impose on these workers despite their years of loyal service. The more pertinent improvement attained were increasing severance package pay from 2 weeks remuneration completed year of service to 4 weeks remuneration for each completed year of service. In addition, Goodyear also paying each worker a lump sum of 100,000.
10 people have been killed in 2 separate road crashes in Mpumalanga's Highveld region this morning. A truck rammed into a stationary bus truck that was parked on the side of the N12 road between Delmas and Emalahleni. 6 people were killed and 6 others sustained serious injuries. In another crash, 4 people died when their vehicle lost control and overturned on the R547 road between Kinross and Kriel. 2 other passengers were injured. Provincial Community Safety, Security and Liaison spokesperson Mweti Musi says the injured people have been taken to nearby hospitals.
This happened when 4 people lost their lives when a vehicle that they were traveling in seemingly lost control and overturned on the side of the road, while on the other hand, 6 people were killed when a truck bus that they were being transported in, while it was stationary on the road and on N12 between Emalahleni and Delmas. An articulated truck crashed into it. The 6 were killed instantly, while 6 others sustained serious injuries.
Mpumalanga Education MEC Lindy Masina has emphasized the need for collaboration with the police service to combat gangsterism and violence in schools. She spoke whilst visiting the family of Tsepo Chabalala, a learner who was fatally stabbed by a fellow learner outside the Senzanga Corner Secondary School in Mpumalanga last week. Masina says learners' safety is a top priority.
At a national level, the Department of SAPS and the Department of Education have signed this protocol to strengthen this, safety of our children. We are hopeful that it will go to a level where even in our schools, these community safety, committees from our schools become as effective as possible so that such incidents doesn't happen.
The El Dorado Park parents accused of the murder and sexual assault of their 4-year-old daughter have abandoned their bail application in the Protea Magistrate Court in Soweto. The little girl's father is accused of allegedly physically and sexually assaulting her daughter. He faces charges of murder, rape, compelled rape, assault and child abuse. The mother is charged for failing to report the alleged sexual offences against her child. The little girl will be laid to rest tomorrow. The case has been postponed to the 9th of October for further investigation. The accused will remain behind bars. The Edgar Lungu burial case has been postponed indefinitely in the Pretoria High Court. This after the Lungu family filed their leave to appeal the bid in the Constitutional Court. The Lungu family and the Zambian government have not been able to resolve the matter over the weekend after the case stood down on Friday. Speaking in the Pretoria High Court this morning, the representative for the Zambian government, David Mtsweni, elaborates.
But what has happened is the family has since filed an application for direct access in the Constitutional Court. And on those bases, the parties have agreed to allow the Constitutional Court process to unfold. And in the circumstances, we have agreed that by agreement between the parties that this application for leave to appeal be postponed.
Recapping the top story, the National Union of Metal Workers says it's reached an improved severance deal with tyre manufacturer Goodyear following the closure of its Kareha plant in the Eastern Cape. I'm on Delambana for SFM News Headlines at 12:30.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Thanks so much, Ornella. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 8 minutes after 12. Thanks for tuning in to Update at Noon. So quite a full program this afternoon. Interesting court stories to update you on as well. And just currently taking a look at a briefing that's taking place in Soweto. And this is, of course, following last week's unrest that played out at Maponya Mall, where one e-hailing driver was killed. And the Gauteng MEC for Transport, MEC Diale Tlabela, is currently addressing the media there. So let's dip in to hear what she has to say.
Filtering of information down, and now we're happy that all of them are on board and will be able to assist them as a department. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Let's take a round of hands and see whether we'll take the second round of hands. Maybe let me take anyone. Number one, number two, any other? All right, please introduce yourself and the media house you come from.
MEC Veronica Makwadi here from the Newsroom Africa. Some of the community members are saying that, look, while there is an agreement with e-hailing and taxi drivers, they want something more legitimate on paper. How far are we in regards to the regulation process for e-hailing drivers? Secondly, I hear that you will be seeing the family just after this visit, but there is still the issue of a passerby, Barati, who got shot. What is the process of speaking to that family? What do you know about her progress as well? Thank you.
Okay, number two. Right.
One of the questions is asked by my colleague, but just a question on, I mean, there's been engagements before. It's not the first time that there's been this feud between these operators. Are you any closer to finding an amicable solution to this? What would it take for you to find a solution? What is really needed to find or to bring this from?
All right, I saw a third head. Yes.
Yes, I want to tell us in this time newspaper. My question would be to the center management. There has not been any outright response from the management on what the interventions they have come up with in relation to the challenges that both the taxi industry and the e-hailing industry is facing in its premises. Can we get a word out of the management to say this is the situation and these are the issues and this is basically the intervention from the management?
Maybe let me start from the last one. We, with Premier Panyaza Lesufi in our talk over the weekend, is that we should assist the center management in strengthening security in the precinct. And you know that Gauteng is rolling out cameras, and this is one of the precincts in this area that we said should be prioritized and to assist the center to strengthen its own security. We will be visiting the family of Baratile just to go through with them on the issues. Remember, colleagues, we were all a bit emotional and we thought we need to come back to the drawing board, and today we now have a team that will deal with what happened on Wednesday, the last week in Maponya. And this is a team that includes everyone, government, the e-hailers themselves, taxi associations, and the center manager. So we are confident that whatever happened will not happen again. Law enforcers are also part of this team, so that we need to ensure not only safety of the center, but safety of the community members in this area. We are confident that, and that's why you see us also in all our meetings having the taxi association. It's our interest that the e-hailers and the taxi associations work together in providing public transport services in Gauteng. So you will always see them together. And this is out of what we've been working on for the past 7 months in the province, to make sure that they all come to the drawing board and they all talk to the issues that are their challenges. And Bontate here have committed themselves. A lot of e-hailers are their children. And we want to assist, and that's why you see us that first thing is to get them properly organized and then assist them to be legalized, to be able to operate legally, and then deal with the other challenges they have. Amongst the challenges they have is exploitation from the apps that they are participating. So there's a whole lot of issues that they are raising with us. Some are within our control, some are not within our control. And there's commitment for self-determination. There's commitment that MEC, if only government can assist us to self-determine and establish our own e-hailing apps where we can be in control as young South Africans that are participating in this. So we are looking at various issues, and that's why there's a commitment that every Monday we are sitting here with e-hailers and the taxi associations here, because if we think in other areas we are having it easier because of the working relationship and collaboration. An example is just a stone throw away from here. It's a Protea Clan Mall. And the talks started here in Maponya Mall. It's just that there were misunderstanding of who is a leader, how do we work together to champion some of the issues. And this we see it with different groupings. When we go to a meeting, there's a new group that comes. Unlike in other areas, we are told in Tshwane, there's a model that works for Gauteng e-hailers and the taxi industry. So we are going to next Monday look into all these models and see how we help the Sowetans that are determined to provide public transport services to their people here in Soweto. So we are here as government. We're hopeful that the city will join us next week when we assist, and that's why we've opened our offices close by here in Soweto to also be able to be responsive as and when. This is a new smart licensing center. We still to open it, and part of the reason was to make sure that we take services to where people are. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we are now migrating also the toll lab to assist public transport service providers. And that's why we're calling on Sowetans that have interest in e-hailing, that have interest in scholar transport, to come on board. Midday here has created a platform on a monthly basis for taxi industry as well as e-hailers, councillors and community leaders to sit around the table about the happenings of this precinct, how do people move around, and many other things, creating jobs, who gets to be employed here in Maponya. It's a platform, it's never done. We have never seen private sector being as active as what center, this center, Ntate Maponya, is. This is a real and a truthful resemblance of what Ntate Maponya was to us as communities of Soweto. So, and that's why you see us also as Department of Roads and Transport having to establish a traffic department, what you used to call traffic department. We're calling it a smart licensing center, which also assists. So if you want any information on how do I become a scholar transport, how do I become an e-hailing operator, come here, we'll help you, we'll take you through all the steps to ensure that you are legal. But you must know we do not agree to illegal operators on our road, because it's a responsibility. It's not just a business, but it's a business that makes you move people from one point to another, and you need to be properly licensed. It used to be at 45 Commissioner here in Johannesburg. We now have brought it here in Soweto, close to you, and please just come over. We'll also be able to assist. We are not happy with the numbers because we pronounced this last week Thursday, and the numbers are very low. So we are saying to everyone, please come forward so that we assist you.
Well, that is the Gauteng Transport MEC Kidibone Diale Tlabela giving feedback on the way forward following that tragic incident at Maponya Mall last week. So we leave that there for the time being. Do stay tuned to SABC News for further updates.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195, and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The boardroom heat is on and the pressure is rising. The Insurance Apprentice, hosted by the one and only Babi Moloi, is delivering drama, tough decisions, and big personalities every week. Expect bold moves, emotional twists, and contestants you'll either root for or roast. And yes, you'll be surprised what you learn about insurance along the way. Open up to the Insurance Apprentice, Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Do you know what's hiding behind the colorful packaging of unhealthy food? Big food companies target children with unhealthy packaged foods that hide high levels of sugar, salt, and fat, which could lead to heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. But the truth is hidden from consumers. Front of package warning labels are a proven solution to help consumers make informed decisions. The government must act now. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Sign the petition on heala.org, HEALA.org, by the 30th of September.
Bafana Bafana will host Nigeria in a FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifier at the Toyota Stadium on Tuesday, 9 September at 6 p.m. Tickets are now available nationwide and online from 70 Rand for adults and 40 Rand for children at all Ticket Pro outlets, including Spar, Postnet, and all petrol stations. Get your tickets early to avoid disappointment. Come in Bafana Bafana supporter gear, ready to sing for a win. Gates will open at 3 p.m. If you are not in Bloemfontein, catch the game on SABC2. For more information, visit safa.net and at Bafana Bafana on all social media channels.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's 20 minutes after 12. Now, jet-setting ministers have cost the South African taxpayers more than 273 million rand in travel costs. Now, that's according to Action SA's GNU tracker. Ministers have spent 273 million on travel, accommodation, stipends and related costs. And this since July 2024, covering both domestic and international trips. The tracker excludes salaries and capital assets and is updated continuously. But for more on this matter, we join on the line now by Action SA's Member of Parliament, Alan Beasley. Thanks so much for your time, Alan. Welcome to Update at Noon.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and good day to you and good day to your listeners.
So, Alan, perhaps we can just start with that GNU tracker, why Action SA decided to have one, and also what exactly does it track and how?
So I think it's very important because we need just a lack of accountability. in government as things currently stand. You know, none of the ministers have signed or deputy ministers have signed performance contracts. So they talk certain things, but there's no accountability. So we believe the GNU tracker is a very important measurement so we can actually measure accountability. And when things are doing well, we can say they're doing well. And when they're not doing well, we can say they're not doing well. So I think as a rational, constructive opposition, we need to highlight where the GNU is succeeding and where it's failing. And I think this ministerial travel certainly highlights where they actually are failing.
Well, it is a lot of money, but compared to what? If we compare this to previous administration, say the sixth administration, how does it compare?
No, it's fascinating. So when the DA were the opposition, you know, travel was 20 million for the year. It's now, we estimate it's going to hit 400 million for this year, because the 270 million that we've monitored is only not for the full year, and some of the departments haven't come. So we think it's going to be north of 400 million. And we just have more ministers, we have more deputy ministers just traveling further and in more luxury. And it's actually so wrong. You know, when 50% of our country is going to go to bed hungry tonight, when we've got so much poverty, when we've got austerity measures, that the ministers and deputy ministers can fly in luxury, and it's so frequently, and there's zero accountability for these trips. It's totally wrong on so many counts.
Now, when you say, you know, they're just flying around, surely this has to be sanctioned and for the ministers and deputy ministers by the president. So is there no tracking, no accountability from the highest office in the land to make sure that this is in fact necessary and not fruitless and wasteful expenditure?
Yeah, there's absolutely zero accountability. I mean, I can give you two classic examples. The one is Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. He flew to the Olympic Games and to the Paralympic Games. That cost R1 million. His deputy flew to the same Olympic Games, same Paralympic Games. That cost another $1 million. And on top of that, I mean, this is actually hard to believe. Their two receptionists flew to the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. That's another R1 million. So between them, they spent R3 million going to the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. I mean, why does the deputy minister have to follow the minister? Why? And when I say the receptionists, I mean, receptionists play a vital role, but there's no need for them to go. So that's R3 million. We've got young kids playing on sports fields, and we can't call them sports fields without shoes because we don't have the funding, yet we can spend R3 million. Then another classic example is the deputy president going to Japan, 4 nights, 950,000 Rand accommodation for 4 nights. That works out at 235,000 Rand per night. That could build a house for a needy family for the rest of their lives. One house, 235,000. And his deputy Director General went on the same trip, and his accommodation was 35,000 for 4 nights. So there's no ways you can justify 950 versus 35,000. It's absolutely absurd, and there's just zero accountability. When they come back, they're not accounting and say this is what we achieved on these trips. Or it's just an open book at the moment, and they're traveling where they want to go, as far as they want to go, and how much expense they want to go.
What about the ministerial handbook? You know, is this as per the provisions thereof? And then what does it say about the ministerial handbook at this stage?
So as Action SA, we've implemented a new legislation. It's called Cut the Cabinet Perks Bill, where we're saying there actually has to be a complete overhaul of the ministerial's handbook, and there needs to be accountability, because at the moment the president can set whatever perks he actually wants, and there's no accountability to Parliament. And we're saying that's actually wrong. It needs to come to Parliament. So when it comes to Parliament, we can actually cost what the ministerial handbook is suggesting, and Parliament can actually come up with recommendations. For example, we can say deputy ministers can't, I mean, there's no sense why deputy ministers have to fly overseas. Nobody actually knows what they do in our country, never mind what they're doing overseas. So we can actually put regulations down in terms of the ministerial handbook and say only on this basis can these trips be justified. And it's important to note, be part of the global world. So I mean, as Action SA saying, these trips are important, but there needs to be justified and accountability. It just can't be an open book, an open check.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Alan Beasley, Action SA Member of Parliament, just giving us a sense of their barometer and, of course, what they have tracked. 273 million rand so far in travel costs for the 7th administration. And as you heard, Alan Beasley said not all of the departments were accounted for there. But to take this further, we're joined on the line now by a public policy specialist at the Wits School of Governance, Dr. Kagiso T.K. Pue. Dr. Pue, thanks so much for your time. Listening to what Alan Beasley had to say and just looking at where we find ourselves as a country, is such spending something that the cabinet can defend?
No, they can't defend it. It's a near impossibility. I mean, if I had to just spin it as a narrative, you're simply saying we're paying for you because there's no decision about where the capital must be. Because we need to pay for your upkeep, we're paying for you to literally live in 2 homes, and we're going to need to be happy with it, and there's no return on investment for us. You can't defend it. I simply don't see how you do it.
So what happened to austerity measures? What happened to cutting back on waste? Because that's what the state was supposed to do. That's what some of the now GNU partners were advocating for in opposition. So what has happened?
Oh, no, within this grand coalition, austerity only works for citizens. I think we must always remember that. It's austerity for us we're told to expect less services. We're told to expect a rundown type of service within the state. That applies to us, but it never applies to the political elites. And look, we've been under austerity, I think, for the last, one might say, 10 years. Just look at how government has been, they really never get to the core aspect of when you say austerity, you need to look at everything within the state. We've never looked at anything within the state. It's always been, you, citizen, must take and expect less, but let us continue as normal. So there's never been austerity for government to actually look at how they can perform better. It's always been about you and I needing to have a low expectation of what the state can do.
And I think the other issue here is, of course, this 273 million. Alan Beasley says it could track closer to around the 400 million mark. If you look at that, and that is only for travel costs, then what are we looking at when we look at the overall bill that would include things like capital assets?
Yes, look, I think probably a way we should look at it, I've written this already to say we never want to have that hard conversation in South Africa about the restructuring properly of government. Look, all of this is simply to show you that there is no vision in terms of what we want as a state.
No,
so you
TK, we don't want to have the conversation. Who doesn't want to have the conversation?
I think citizens don't want to push government to have that conversation to the point where, in the same way, when we look at when people wanted to increase VAT, how citizens and even businesses were up in arms. Where's the same, fora about saying, listen, why is your cabinet this large without justification? Why don't you make a decision about where the capital must be, which we all know it should be in Pretoria, and let's work towards that. It's not as though it's unique to South Africa. Other places, if you look at what happened when West and East Germany fell apart, they said, listen, Cape Town, and I'm just using Cape Town as the analogy here, you know that you make some money from having parliament there. We'll give you a package for 5 to 7 years so that you can have a soft landing, but the capital needs to come to Pretoria. No one wants to have that conversation. And until we really say, listen, let's really push for it, everything we're speaking about, these extra costs, it's simply speaking to the fact that there is an indecision within it. Because, look, even if we're to cut down costs, what does that look like? Even if we're to cut down saying, listen, you must live and have smaller cars. It doesn't really get to the nub of the issue, which is to say we are way overpaying for the fact that there is an indecision about how we should move forward, A, in terms of what the architecture of government looks like, and B, the issue of the capital, which I think we could all agree it should really be in Pretoria. And then we should be thinking, how do we make it easier for Cape Town to really bear the cost of this?
And that's an interesting one. But I do take the point that you make about citizens. But have we become, so paralyzed as the citizenry that we actually do not know how to push back, even when we're unhappy, TK?
At the risk of sounding controversial, yes. One only needs to look at the thing called the national dialogue. I call it a meeting of a special type, where we literally, no one wants it, but there you go. They were able to have it. And I think that's the problem with South African citizens. I think we've yet to build that. Look, we know what our national psyche is against, which is to say no one ever wants to go back to apartheid and colonialism. Fine. There are those who are still confused and live in that mire of whatever that is. But in truth, that's what we're against. I think we've yet to decide what are we for as a state and beyond the politicians and political parties. And I guess that's always the hardest thing, because it's going to require people like me who also do just maybe talk here for a living to be able to say, listen, let's put the nuts and bolts of what does this look like. Because at the moment, if we were to ask this of our political elites, we're not going to get anything there. And I think that's what probably makes it so hard for everyone, including myself, to say, how do we then make that next step such that we now say, listen, politician A, political elites, you're beholden towards us. And I think that's where we're kind of stuck at the moment. And we probably need maybe a whole lot more thinking around it. I think there are models we can follow. One of them is to say, on this cost thing, let's push the government to give us a referendum to say we want a capital. Give us decisions A or B.
Oh, but you know, that's like swearing at government if you ask for a referendum. And we haven't had one since the advent of democracy in South Africa.
And that for me is a problem, because there's many decisions which have been made, social, economic, which really should have gone to a referendum. And the fact that we haven't pushed it, kind of maybe in the government, and I think the political elites always run towards this thing saying, oh no, you know, within the constitution, I think even that needs to be up for referendum. Look, there's this thing called a second republic, which people are pushing for. And it sounds more exotic than it really is. It's simply saying, we know what the failures of the state has been. We know where things are lacking. And there's nothing wrong with looking inwardly to say, how do we fix this? And part of fixing it is to say the architecture, meaning, yes, we might have to go to a constituency-based system, because I think that would make it a bit easier, where we can say, look, Sakina represents what I want. She lives in my area. Let me get her to parliament. And if she's not performing, let's have a mechanism and ways. I know it was there in part, but I think we really do need to start pushing. And look, this is where the unevenness of what we mean by citizenry comes to the point. When business cries and they put their different little groupings together, they have the ability to make government cry, and government pays attention. I think the only thing we have at the moment is the ability to stop things. But again, I don't think we've really consolidated to come together to say, let's get business, let's get all of us together and say, government, enough is enough. We are still at that theoretically beautiful way of saying, how do we do it? Because I think there are means and ways. We just have to kind of act on it. And it's easier said than done, because, look, there's a low trust atmosphere within South Africa. And that, for me, kind of kills it a bit, because people say, yeah, we hear you. But the next thing someone who's hearing is going to say, but which political party do you support?
Well, a good note on which to leave it, and let's hear what our listeners have to say. Thank you so much, Dr. Kagiso Tike-Poe, who is a public policy specialist at the Wits School of Governance. Apologies there on Delambana. What's the latest?
Thank you, Sakina. The mother of a 4-year-old girl from Eldorado Park in Johannesburg was physically and sexually abused allegedly by her father will now face a murder charge. And a cash-in-transit security officer has been shot and killed while collecting cash at a shop in East London in the Eastern Cape. It is alleged that 4 armed men ambushed the officers while money was being loaded to the vehicle used to transport it. And the National Union of Metal Workers says it's reached an improved severance deal with tire manufacturer Goodyear following the closure of its Kariega plant in the Eastern Cape. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Well, on this Monday afternoon, we're joined by Zimele Mbanjwa, who's FNB Investment Research Analyst. Good afternoon, Zimele.
Afternoon, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
Well, how's it looking on the markets?
Yeah, so today we've seen some interesting moves on the JSE, but just starting with the overall picture, the oil share is down around 0.5 percentage point. This is coming off of weakness across the board. In fact, I see that the resources have recovered a little bit off the back of a bit of a stronger gold price due to the increased uncertainty that is linked, I think, mostly to the conversation that will be happening between Donald Trump and the president of the president of Ukraine, along with these European peers. So we've seen a bit of heightened gold price, uncertainty over there, with the expectation really being that the meeting might not yield any desirable results. Trump seems to be really happy about his conversation that he had over the weekend with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. However, no meaningful outcome came from that. And I think the market or the speculation currently is pretty much that Trump seems to be more on the side of Zelensky and Ukraine having to give up some of the land that is already occupied by Russia. And that pretty much will bring about a ceasefire or maybe a truce. The European counterparts, the Ukrainian counterparts, as well as the Europeans, do not seem to be favoring that type of solution. So we'll see what happens later on. But yeah, as such, we're seeing weaker trading in the European markets right now. European markets are largely all trading lower. And I think the JSE is pretty much following that risk-off mood with global investors just on a risk-off mood for now. So as I say, the all share is down around 0.5 percentage points. Top 40 is also down around that much. In fact, it's 0.63%. Resources are marginally a bit higher, mostly flat. The rand itself has also remained relatively stable at that 17.60 mark to the dollar. 23.82 to the pound, 20.55 to the euro. Some of the major developments today in our local markets, we've seen MTN release interim results, which for the most part were very good, well guided for. However, the share price for MTN is actually down around 6%. The markets, in fact, okay, before I get to that, MTN also reported a group strategic review that it says it's aimed at sharpening its focus on 3 platforms, which are connectivity, fintech, and digital infrastructure. This included a management reshuffle as well. With new appointments such as Freddy Mulman as the CEO, as well as Yolanda Tsuba as Deputy CEO. While the results were good, I think the uncertainty around the direction from the market, as well as the what we saw within the results, was that the growth in MTN South Africa was downgraded, even though the overall group guidance was raised. So I think the market is a bit uncertain about what kind of picture that's going to be looking like, say, in the next 6 to 12 months. So that's why that share price is down despite the very good results. We also received interim results from Thungela. That share price is down around 2.6%. Thungela also guided for its results before we got an operational update, for production update, as well as a trading update, which guided for weaker earnings and profitability. I mean, the coal market right now is not necessarily the most popular market, given the green, I suppose, the green agenda globally. So coal prices have been subdued. I think also the uncertainty around global trade and global manufacturing and demand from, like big economies like China, as well as and India, which are now focusing more on their own production rather than importing from outside. So yeah, Thungela's results was a bit disappointing, but it was already guided for, so we expected that. And then we also got interim results from ABSA as well. Solid performance, strong dividend of 7.85 rand. The group saw a 5.2% increase in total income and a 16.5 rise in headline earnings per share. So, it's been a busy day on the JSE right now, but I think really what's driving market sentiment locally and perhaps globally